when we're going to see the insider stories. I was actually talking to Kyle Lopez and Josh Thornton, who run Ether Games, earlier today. They came by the office, and it was really cool talking to them because they are just charged up and on the pulse of Magic Finance. So I'm really excited to interview them for the insider stories coming up. I have probably about 12 to 15 people and stores to interview for it. So I think we're going to have a good cross-section of people to interview. I'm just really jazzed about that.
Yeah, I love the idea for an interview series. I'm excited. There's people like Nick Beckfar who have been doing this for a long time and really have just a wealth of knowledge to share. Kyle Lopez, I think we've talked about a few times. He's just kind of gotten into vending at events and is he's the guy who's been using our software in his booth to make money, right?
Yeah, and one of the many. I have an appointment. I'm going to be going to Dayton to interview Nick Beckfar at an event on October 23rd. I think I put it on my calendar, so we're going to have some of that too.
What's in Dayton? A PTQ?
I think there's a PTQ in Dayton, and the goal is that I get there at round one and I can interview him when the entire room is silent, so that we don't have just a whole bunch of people talking bad beat stories over what should be an insider stories recording. And I also want him to be able to actually participate instead of having to buy and sell the whole time.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually want to jump into a question that I posted based on some of our discussions earlier in the day. The buy-a-box promos for Sylvan Caryatid and Goblin Rabblemaster. What's going on with those as they relate to the price of the pack foil, or more importantly, just the non-foil card itself?
I mean, they apparently have had no effect on suppressing the price, right?
And we've seen this before with, Scavenging Ooze. That wasn't a buy-a-box promo. It was literally a free card if you got duels.
Oh my God, I remember that.
And stores were selling them and weren't supposed to, and some stores still have some of those packs. That was a real mess. I guess it really depends on, people aren't buying M15 boxes anymore. So what are the stores that still have some of the Rebel Masters left doing with them? I know Wizards doesn't want them to sell them and inject those into the market, but I really feel like that's where they're ending up. So the fact that there probably aren't a bunch unclaimed sitting on store shelves, meaning roughly all the Rabble Masters and Caryatids that we're going to get into the market are probably in the market at this point, and it really hasn't held those prices under $20.
Yeah, and we were talking last night on the Insider Hangout on the IRC chat about how some stores respect the Wizards buy-a-box, and some have just cracked them and sold them. And I suppose it's tempting when they're $20 bills sitting on your shelf. Which also got us into discussing Wizards rules, which we just started calling Wizard Law, which is pretty amusing from a Harry Potter standpoint. I remember, Kelly, when you had started a store, you had to actually show them. You had to take a picture of your store's sign and storefront to show them you were real.
That is correct.
So, I mean, Wizards is really serious about don't sell the buy-a-box promos, but apparently, a lot of stores just disregard that with impunity, but other ones observe it. So, I mean, without the buy-a-box promo, would Caryatid be a $25 card? Would Rabblemaster be $25 or $30? Honestly, I don't think that the buy-a-box promos put in a huge quantity into the marketplace.
I would be inclined to agree.
Bring up Scavenging Ooze, that it was a free card, and it was like $10 if you bought duels and you just took that ticket to your local store that still had Scavenging Ooze. But I remember...
Yeah, and there were some people gaming that, printing out the ticket and going to a bunch of different stores, or counterfeiting those slips, basically. Because all it was a printout.
Somebody, when I was running my shop, a group of guys just came in and were just abusing the system to get free, I think there was free Liliana Vest Planeswalkers. No, it was Titans. There were foil Titans.
Yeah,
and
there were Titans.
I wasn't going to mess with the Wizard Law and sell them, but when someone comes in and is obviously scamming the system, I'm like, where do I draw the line between what's legitimate and not? And it's like, I wanted to give them away as F&M promos or any kind of promos, any prize, whatever, but these guys just cleaned me out by scamming the system, and I was like, well, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah, and you're taking product out of the hands of people who could legitimately get it, but there's no real way as a a store owner to be policing that.
But for our purposes, whether or not they're ending up in the hands of people who are deserving, blah blah blah, they're ending up in the market, and the people that are buying those, en masse, and scamming, they're probably listing those on TCG Player right away. So those are copies ending up in the in the market.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a good
we are
point.
seeing the effect those are having. Like the more incentive there is to game like that, the more likely there are to end up for sale and not in a casual player's binder or deck where they'll never see the light of day. So, despite the fact that Duels of the Planeswalkers isn't super appealing to people who know how to play Magic and would rather play Magic online, it was actually worth buying the recent few duels just to get those, like the free scavenging ooze for the PlayStation or the the Frost Titan or whatever, the
Oh yeah,
Grave
I
Titan.
remember with Duels
So
2014, I bought I bought it for Scavenging Ooze, and then my wife put it on her tablet to play. So.
It's a fine game, too.
Oh, so yeah, I think a Duels.
I think Doug and I were saying earlier, duels ended up being what they wanted Portal to be back in '97.
That's a really good point.
It's a really good entree for new people. It's intuitive. It doesn't let you do anything wrong. It forces you to learn how to play Magic correctly.
Yeah, I think it's huge. Like if they polished up duels a little bit, I think it could appeal to the Hearthstone crowd. But making it free to play and getting the free to play system set up is not something that they've shown they can do a great job at.
No, so the fact that duels isn't super appealing and people are still, redeeming those vouchers just shows, essentially what free money does. So I don't know if we could see $25 non-mythic regular rares, in a set that's opened as much as well, because Theros wasn't open a ton and M15 wasn't open a ton. So I don't think we're going to see an analog of that in Khans of Tarkir, especially because I don't like the Rattleclaw Shaman as much as I like Caryatid, obviously. So I don't think we're going to see that this time around.
I heard somebody make a really good point about the Morph Mana guy. And they were saying that it's really, really crucial that it can beat for 2. That the matchups that in his particular deck, which I'm drawing a blank on, he said, I really like that this can beat for 2 when it's a morph or when it's face up, because the hexproof doesn't really matter. He was more inclined to have the offensive creature and the one-time mana burst to get him up above a certain threshold. So I think that there's a good comparison between those cards for sure, but we have to remember that they play vastly different roles in their decks.
But I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you're limited to teamer kind of decks with that. I don't know if you want to play that just because it taps for green and one other color. So I think it's going to be less ubiquitous in standard because I think it's a little more limited to teamer decks, whereas the Caryatid gets played a lot more ubiquitously
So
across.
I actually have a bit of experience on this because my podcast partner on Modern Enthusiast, James, has been playing Teamer and Standard recently, and he said Rattleclaw Mystic is bad in Teamer, but you need it. You need something to fix your mana and accelerate you, and it is better to have an attacker than a 0/3 wall. So he was like, I don't want to run this card, but I have to run it. And sometimes you get the games where you draw it on turn 7 and you morph it down, and then the opponent has to guess whether it's a Hooded Hydra or a Segu Maul.
A Segu Mauler, yeah, that's true.
Like if it's a Segu Mauler, they just lose if that thing flips. So I think it's pretty wild that the morph ability on it actually. I mean, it's like an actual bluff in the Teamer deck.
Which is what Mark Rosewater wanted initially. He's always tried to make a card that bluffs, and he failed his first few attempts. Like Curse Scroll, people are not using that right, and I just felt bad for Mark Rosewater. He's like, this is a perfect bluff card, and everyone's like, mountain. 2 cards in my hand, both mountains, take 2. You're using it wrong.
Yeah, and
I don't
here's
know,
why
man. I just won a tournament.
It's just not good. So, Kelly's promoted the question about talking about Rakshasa Death Dealer, and
Yes.
Man, everyone's split on this guy.
Yeah, so Fleece Main Lion's the obvious analog to it, and Fleece Main Lion is about $4 right now. It moved up a bit because the Abzan decks are playing it. So here's what Rakshasa Death Dealer is good at. Well, it can punch through any blockers in an Abzan mirror ground stall. You know, if Elspeth or Hornet Queen aren't spamming tokens, then you will get past a Courser, and you will get past Caryatid and things like that. Certainly, when you have the mana to pump it, and you attack into a Courser, just like leaving up the mana, they don't typically block, and then you get free damage in, and then you can use that mana post main, and you're in your post attack in your second main. So it's pretty good off the top. It can conceivably scale a lot bigger than Fleece Main Lion. So it's got that going for it. I don't think it's going to be played in Sultai decks because that's not where they want to be. But it's not a sexy card. I mean, it's like Putrid Leech or Spectral Lynx. Like, these are good cards, but they're not exciting.
Can I jump in on the Putrid Leech comparison? I think that people compare it to Putrid Leech a lot for obvious reasons, but I think they're missing the point. Whereas Putrid Leech was a much more aggressive card in that you could only pump it once a turn. You could only pump it for a fixed amount, and you lost life. You didn't have to pay mana. So it naturally fit in decks with a lower, tighter mana curve that didn't really play for a late game. I think the value in Rakshasa Death Dealer is the fact that this is a format where there aren't a lot of great 2-drops. And we haven't really seen what control decks are going to do yet, because the first week of the season is always just burn decks. I think there might be a control deck that likes to have this as a 2/2 for 2, just a bear on its early turns that can become a threat late game. But also remember that when you hit turn 8 and you're playing Drago, this guy's an I don't even know what to call him, but he's pretty much a bomb off the top of your deck, because you can drop him with 5, 6, 7 mana untapped in the late game. You've got the regenerate up, and then if they try to attack into it, he can block. And the next turn you can swing for 6 or maybe 8 damage, all the while keeping counterspell mana, removal mana, regeneration mana up. So I think comparing him to, I don't know what a good comparison is yet, to be honest.
So here's some things to consider. That it can regenerate and grow big means that Bile Blight, Hero's Downfall, Murderous Cut will not kill it. With untapped mana, it will survive most of the good removal in the format. The comparison when it was printed was True Fire Paladin, which is red and white. It's a 2/2. It has vigilance, and it can basically fire breathe and gain first strike. So it's never going to die in a combat, but True Fire Paladin also did nothing when it was in standard. And people are saying, well, you look at that, it's not going to do anything. The format doesn't need a 2/2 fire breather. But I would also point out that True Fire Paladin was in red and white, and that there wasn't really a red and white deck during standard at that time that was very good, and also that's not exactly a creature that red-white wants.
I think
you don't run the creature that's awesome late game off the top as much as you might want that in a black-green deck where you have things like Courser, things like Caryatid, where getting to the late game is possible and highly, highly likely, actually.
I mean, maybe this is a Lotleth Troll. This could be the card everyone wanted Lotleth Troll to be.
It could be.
Yeah, actually, that's probably the best comparison so far. But the thing with True Fire Paladin is, ignoring Vigilance for a moment, ability A, strictly worse, because it doesn't pump toughness. That's what gets it out of range of Bile Blight.
Mm-hmm.
Ability B, First Strike, lets it survive some corner case combat scenarios. Regenerate stops all the removal in the format except Utter End, pretty much, all the single target removal, that the toughness pump can't. So I think True Fire Paladin is another one of those tempting comparisons that people will try to make, but it's another one of those not quite theirs. I think Lotleth Troll, though, Jason, you hit on that. let's talk more about the Lotless Troll comparison.
Well, I mean, everyone was basically they thought that Zombies deck basically wrote itself. So when the spoiler was out, it seemed fairly obvious there was going to be some sort of Zombies deck, and Lotless Troll was going to be the cornerstone of that. What Lotless Troll wanted to do in that deck, in addition to being an enabler to get stuff in the graveyard and get your zombie crap going, Lotless Troll wanted to be your bear that you could make bigger and protect. So I see Savage Knuckleblade and I see Rakshasa Death Dealer, and it sort of harkens back to a type of magic that people don't play anymore, which was like the aggro control type stuff. You used your mana to keep your dude alive, and if he lived, you would play some stuff post-combat. So we used to play turn 1 birds, turn 2 troll ascetic, turn 3 GT, put it on the troll. Can you kill my troll? I win the game. People don't really play that kind of magic anymore, just because the cards they're printing just aren't really conducive to it. You know, it's almost like a fairies type card, because fairies was sort of the last aggro control deck that people played.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what Lotless Troll was, something that you could regenerate, pump, keep alive, do all kind of crazy stuff. It had more upside with the dumping stuff in the yard. But I really feel like you can play stuff post-combat if you have decided you're not regenerating or pumping this guy. He scales better late because with an empty grip and a bunch of lands on the field, your Lotless Troll's terrible. But with an empty grip and a bunch of lands on the field, if you top deck this guy, he's suddenly blocking a 6 damage creature and killing it.
He's a must handle off the top.
I think so. I think he's something you can stick early, but he scales into the late game because you can pump mana into him. Pump Knights historically have been good in certain formats. There was that Lorwyn block guy that got played in the Kithkin deck, because he had pro black and pro white, and he was a Pump Knight. So
Stillmoon Cavalier.
Yeah, Stillmoon Cavalier. That was a legitimate card. I really think that I'm being reminded of Pump Knights in the past and how sometimes they've been good, sometimes they've been not great. There was like Stromgulled Crusader or whatever and Cold Snap. That wasn't very good, but
those saw only a tiny bit of play. So here's another question. We said the obvious comparison is Fleecemane Lion if you're playing Abzan. I remember I was talking with Bill Caminos, who came in second at Indianapolis at the IQ. The first weekend cons was legal, and I was talking with him and one of his testing partners, and it was like the Abzan mid-range decks, you have to have something that punches through, and they had actually figured out that what you probably want to do sideboarding is take out your Coursers of Prufix, because they gum up the board and they never get through. So they were talking about you want to have something that you can just start punching through. And that, like, a Fleecemane Lion will never die to a Siege Rhino, but it will never get through a Siege Rhino. And that was an issue.
Yeah. Well, I think that the important takeaway here is that what you compare cards to is pretty important. Like when people compare Painseer to Dark Confidant, I just want to explain to them that they're not comparing apples to oranges. They're comparing apples to pine cones. I mean, they're such functionally different cards that happen to have similarities, and I think that the comparisons that we've made here are better than the ones of True Fire Paladin and of Putrid Leech. Those are deceptive.
Let's talk about the archetypal Firemane Angel Mantis Rider thing that people have been realizing Mantis Rider is better than we think. And yes, or a Lightning Angel, sorry, not Firemane Angel. That yes, it's better than we think, and we were all kind of mistaken comparing it to Lightning Angel, because Lightning Angel existed when Flame Tongue Kava was legal, and that's why it never saw play. And that's why very little stuff saw play that couldn't survive getting flame-tongued. And Mantis Rider doesn't have to deal with that. And we sort of forget that. We have a blind spot to why wasn't something played.
Well, the thing with Lightning Angel is that, in hindsight, if you ask, would you take Mantis Rider, pack 1 mana onto its cost for 1 toughness, there's no chance that was...
That's a very good point. point, actually.
It's the only difference beside the creature type angel and the awesome RK post art. And sorry, that's not enough to make a card playable in standard.
I mean, it's very hard for me to think of any card where if you told me for the bargain price of 1 more mana, you get another point of toughness. It's very hard for me to think of any card in Magic where I would pay that.
It's Arcades Sabbath Universe.
Everybody gets the castle.
Yeah, for 1 more mana on Troll Ascetic, you get, Thrun.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want a 3/3 if I can get a 4/4 for 4 mana.
Absolutely,
Yeah. So I think that's, if this format were different, if there was something that dealt 4 damage consistently, then the extra toughness might be worth it. But it's just so efficient for its mana cost that upping it to 4 and then comparing it to Lightning Angel is kind of a red herring.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a couple people wanted us to talk about Doomwake Giant, so maybe we can shift the discussion over to that.
Yes, definitely.
And then, Kelly, can you pull it up so that people can see it in Trader Tools?
I'm on it. There we go. It's the spread is crazy right now.
So this is the thing in my thought is that Doomwake Giant has gotten a bit of pre-Pro Tour attention because it's the next level answer to Elspeth and Hornet Queen, and you can jam that guy with Eidolon of Blossoms. You can get 2 or 3 triggers off of it and wrath somebody's board. So I mean, there's attention on Doomwake Giant for sure. People like it on their sideboards. I had mentioned that I don't really trust rares to go more than $5. I mean, it is from Journey. I don't know that you're going to see a really consistent Constellation strategy that can trigger that more than once or twice. Because the best Constellation card is green, and the second best here, Doomwake Giant, is black. And it's hard to think of stuff that will want all that doesn't already. You get Courser. But it doesn't really seem like a dominant strategy. Play these spells so that you can sicken your opponent's board.
Don't forget about Nyxweaver. It's in those colors, and it's an enchantment creature. And that was a card you were high on earlier in the week.
Yeah, I was big on it, especially because if you see there on Trader Tools, Adventure On is buying it at 12 cents, and there were a whole bunch of copies at a dime on the internet. And whenever you see a card that will immediately sell for more than you bought it for, that's a pretty easy pickup.
Yeah, I should mention that you're not buying it to flip it for the 2 cents a card profit. You're buying it because the upside is there and the downside doesn't exist.
Certainly, and you can buy in large quantities of uncommons. That's nice.
So with Nyxweaver, I think that there might be a strategy that revolves around it and some of the other enchantment creatures that where you can start recurring Nyxweavers and just continually getting a Doomwake Giant trigger every turn, or maybe even twice a turn in the late game. Maybe a little more combo-y, but aggressive at the same time. I don't know. It's just an interesting overlap.
And Nyxweaver I've seen pop up in 2 to 4 in lists. I don't know if it's found a great home yet, but it is a good role player in the Sultai decks. So it's good to keep that in mind.
Definitely. What do you make of the big spread on Doomwake Giant?
So this is my thought on it. A spread is, for listeners, it is the difference between the TCG mid price and the highest buy list price. And that is we look at it as a measure of market confidence in the card. So a hot chase rare will have a spread that's typically 30 to 40% when it's in standard. I remember Snapcaster Mage was about 30% when it was in standard. And the reason why was that dealers knew that they could sell as many of those as they got coming in, so they were willing to pay quite a lot more than they would normally pay on a card because they knew you have a ready market for it.
Plus, they knew that people that bought Snapcasters would buy other stuff, and they couldn't turn away a sale.
Yeah,
and there's lots of reasons to have stuff in stock.
The biggest issue is that store. You always want to be able to say yes to the customer, and you don't want to be the store that doesn't have Snapcasters.
Mm-hmm. So when you see a card with a low spread, you see a card that has it's very close to the buy list price that stores want it and they want to sell it for. Sometimes that means that the market is not efficient. So we talked about Nyxweaver having basically a negative spread for a while because the uncommons market is not as efficient in the economics term as the rare market. People aren't rushing out to fulfill those buy lists to drive the prices back to normal. I think that when you look at the spread on Doomwake Giant of 80%, you see buy lists that have not caught up, or maybe are not catching up because the dealers are not confident in it. But you also see a lot of the cheap copies on TCG Player have disappeared. Like there are stores that will only list rares for $1 or more, and they figure if you're not going to sell it, you're not going to sell it. But if things move, you're going to get sales at $1, and you don't have to work hard to reprice. So I think you see
Someone in Insider Chat just made the point that it's an intro deck rare.
yeah, and then that's going to keep the prices down quite a bit too.
I don't. It's hard to gauge the effect of the intro deck because I think the intro deck itself matters to an extent, and whether there's a Thragtusk in that intro deck. Like, no one's going to bust an intro deck to get out a $1 Doomwake Giant. Or a $5 Doomwake Giant. They will bust it to get a $20 Thragtusk.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And Doomwake Giant isn't sexy. Like, the best case scenario with Doomwake Giant is you play that guy, you kill some of their tokens, and the next turn you cast 2 or 3 enchantments, and, like, you drown in sorrow their board. That's not as cool as, like, I play Thragtusk, next turn I play Restoration Angel, and guess what happens?
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel about Doomwake Giant, because I loved it as a buy at 75 cents, and I think there's sometimes that cards are a good buy financially, irrespective of their playability.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we're doing is buying pre-hype and selling into hype. So, irrespective of whether Doomwake Giant is the answer to the format, I felt like at 75 cents you could expose yourself to so much upside as a result of any sort of excitement at the Pro Tour that if it hits $5 and it starts buy listing for $3, you quadrupled up and you have a great weekend.
Yeah, and some things are weirdly priced anyway. So, for example, Sigmund Osfresser, one of our writers, had pointed out that I think it was Angel of Serenity he had said was, I think, $4 at the time, and he said, look, Avacyn Angel of Hope is $9. It is an unplayable mythic. The only people buying this are buying it as an angel. And they want it for their angel collections. Like, Avacyn's kind of fun as a thematic character, but he said, Angel of Serenity is a mythic angel. It is less than what Avacyn cost, which was in the exact previous set, or near to it, and like this is an underpriced card. It should be more because it is a mythic angel, and he was absolutely right. Like the card was just mispriced at pre-sale.
Yeah, that was like I really thought when I started getting into finance, which was around Innistrad, that was like, okay, people have stuff figured out by now. Like, yeah, I bought $4 Thragtusks pre-sale or whatever, but that's not going to happen. So it was weird seeing something as comically underpriced as Angel of Serenity ended up being, because most of the time stuff's overpriced. Mm-hmm. Most of the time Star City Games puts up 10 copies of Painseer at $4 and sees if they sell out. Painseer got to 10 by Star City incrementally putting up 10 copies and seeing if it sold out. So it's kind of funny to see something underpriced when you have hype around it. I think Sigmund was absolutely wrong about Avacyn only being bought by Angel collectors because it's actually one of the least fair EDH generals.
Mm-hmm.
You're Armageddon everybody's lands but yours. But I think he was right. It's a big dirtily angel, and compared to Grizzlebrand, which has real apparent upside to people that like playing unfair Magic, whereas Avacyn's like Grizzlebrand's good in everything. It was so good it was banned at EDH like right away, because it just ruined EDH.
Oh yeah, it was a yellow mouse.
Whereas it took some work to ferret out how good Avacyn was. So it's weird to see something that ends up underpriced.
So real quick, I just pulled up Angel of Serenity on Trader Tools because it was Sigmund's probably his best call of all time. Am I looking at this? Am I correct to realize that this card is under $2 retail?
See, that's fascinating that it dropped that far.
That's crazy. That's really
the fact that it was like only a 1 or 2 of in decks, and like it tailed off at the end of its playability. Also, people weren't rushing to dump off these a playset at a time.
Yeah, and the Angel players have their copies.
Yeah.
True. I don't know. I wouldn't mind buying into these below $1.50 just to have them. I don't see much more downside to them. Both mythics are only 50 cents.
There are EDH decks that want it. It's it gets played in Kalia. I play this in Mayel. Like people that play Angels casually. Like it's a powerful angel with a good effect that everybody can grok. So Yeah, under $2, that seems okay. I definitely would be happy paying 65 cents for them like Card Kingdom does.
Yeah, and Austin in our chat room points out regarding Doomwake Giant that the foils of Doomwake Giant are only about 20 cents higher than the regular ones. So, if you get the foil multiplier on it, there are going to be people who love to foil out their decks.
Don't forget in the intro deck is a foil, man. That's why it's so cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to move on here. Doomweight Giant, I think the consensus here is that there's probably some upside, but it's also likely not going to define a format.
And my feeling is the best place to be at this point in cons is on those 50-cent or dollar rares. I don't think I want to be on a $5 card. I don't want to be on Scuttling Doom Engine very much, even though I like it. I want to be on the stuff that has a chance, Rakshasa Death Dealer was $1 or less, at least when I looked at it yesterday. I want to be on that kind of card because it's much more likely that a rare goes from 50 cents to $3 to $4 than it goes from 5 to 20. So Dig Through Time, I have heard floor reports that Dig Through Time is everywhere at the Pro Tour.
There's a card I like.
And that you're going to be seeing it a lot. So Dig Through Time TCG player mid is $5.50. It was $1.75 last week. If you bought your copies then, and we were saying, I know on Twitter how awesome it was and how good the card is. If you got that, you made a great profit. I don't know if you're going to be buying your foil Treasure Cruises at 20 and hitting at 50 on that, but
let me point out that on Dig Through Time, what was it retailing for last week?
It was $1.7. I bought my set at $1.75, my personal set.
So let me put it into perspective. If they were under $2, right now Card Kingdom is willing to buy Dig Through Time at $2.50. But here's what's interesting to me, and you can see this on the video overlay. They're willing to buy 2,300 copies of them.
That is a sign of confidence in a card.
Yeah, Card Kingdom has had some insane quantity numbers on cons cards lately. It
makes me think they picked an arbitrarily large but finite number. As opposed to we don't really expect to hit 10,000. Just put the number so big we'll never hit it, just so that we don't stop buying them because somebody shipped too many and we were gone for the night. So
that's entirely possible.
It seems so arbitrary that's probably just them gaming their own.
But at the same time, that is an indicator of how much they care about buying consoles.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They don't want to hit their mark and stop buying them.
But what I'm thinking is 2,300 of them means we'll buy as many as you can find from us. And if they're willing to buy 2,300, I don't know of many individual actors that have that many cards.
But when we segued into talking about this card, Doug was saying he didn't really like $5 cards as much as 50-cent cards.
Well,
so this is sort of has the Treasure Cruise sailed on this ship, on this card?
Maybe. It depends on if it's a 4 of in half of the top 8. No, it's a $10 card. If it's
this could be
2 of in two control decks.
I'm not going to be buying this at $5 hoping it hits 10. I think you make your money and you're happy on Dig Through Time if you bought it at $1.75. We were really big on it in Modern. It's Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time are both cards, and I think enough analysis has been done on them that I will be brief, but those were cards that people looked at and immediately dismissed of well, you cast your first Dig Through Time, and then you're never ever going to be able to pay for the next one, which is just absolutely false. Treasure Cruise, you're going to do back-to-back Treasure Cruises pretty you're going to hit that regularly in Modern and in Legacy, and you don't even have to run Tome Scour. You're going to just be able to do that stuff.
People have no idea how to think about Delve, is what I came up with.
This is how to think about it. It is like Affinity, and it is like Tolarian Academy. It is a very dangerous mechanic, and I think Wizards is going to regret printing Delve.
I think that you might be right. And Nyx Weaver actually makes Delve a lot scarier.
Yeah, I mean, it says basically add 2 mana to your mana pool every single turn, and it doesn't disappear. It's like Omnath.
Yeah. I think that Dig Through Time is one of those things, and we'll wrap up on this before I want to move on to Sarkhan. It's one of those cards where I think people are going to vastly over or underrate it, given its performance in this Pro Tour. We'll see. I think that if you didn't buy in at the dollar or so last week, I'd be a lot more cautious about buying in closer to 6.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch it at 6. It was phenomenal in Splinter Twin because you get to go find your Exarch and your Splinter Twin.
Yeah.
You know what I do kind of like right now is Necropolis Fiend, because I think if you are doing something kind of delvy, the fact that it's basically a Tombstalker that traded a power for a relevant ability.
Mm-hmm.
I think that card's super duper underrated, and it's like $1 right now. You know, as a
It's less
mythic,
than
I think it's
$1.
got real upside because
So,
Brad Nelson's big on
Jason,
the card.
Necropolis Fiend is not a mythic; it's a rare.
Oh, sure. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm
see
looking
the
at
thing
it.
now.
I mean,
Yeah, I
I
feel
still
like I just looked it up on Google and it looked pretty orange to me. Well, you know, ugh. If it's not a mythic, then that kind of
I mean,
sucks.
at 80 cents though, that's a card. It's not going to be a 4 of, but
No,
it's
probably not.
but it's
No.
one of those cards that you could see hit $2 to $3. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. If not Necropolis Fiend exactly, then the 80-cent card that's obviously playable. Like obviously playable rares at under $1 are fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can
Oh,
actually pull up
it seems like none of the players are willing to commit. Like the dealers don't have to raise their buy price because they're getting the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And players are like just don't want to commit to anything, so everyone's watching coverage and waiting to buy stuff when they have a deck list.
Yeah.
Like a spoiler doesn't make as many people buy as a top 8 deck list does.
Yeah, absolutely. A top 8 deck list is confirmation that there's going to be huge demand. Just while people net deck and copycat. So real quick, I'm going to pull up, while we start discussing Sarkhan, I'm going to pull up a list of the cheap rares in cons. So we have had a few people asking about Sarkhan, and I have my opinion. And the question we got asked was, when is the best time to dump them? But I think this is a bigger question than when. I think there's a lot to be talked about here.
You know, and here's my lawyer answer on Sarkhan is it depends, which is a really crummy way to answer that question, but it depends on what you got in at. Sarkhan was like he keeps climbing, which is really nice to see. I think that's a $40 or $50 card. But if you got in on that guy at $20, I would get out of him right now. But
Wow,
if you
why?
got that guy at 30, maybe you hold it for quite a while. Because I don't see Sarkhan dropping below 30 in the next month or two. That guy's nuts.
Yeah, he seems pretty... I think he might be the most aggressive planeswalker we've ever seen.
Because there are in the original, like at the beginning of a new format, the linear strategies that are reliable often punish the cute stuff. The green-red devotion is one of those strategies. Sarkhan is a wonderful accompaniment in there. We have to remember that Stormbreath Dragon will at some point rotate, and that Sarkhan will be taking that place. And the 4/4 hasted flyer is a wonderful niche in Magic right now that people still want in Standard.
Plus,
Well,
this card allows Doug to talk about Flame Tongue Kevu some more.
Oh, let me talk about Flame Tongue Kavu some more. Sarkhan also has a limited modern playability. He fights with Kuranos as the slot for the big dumb 5-drop finisher that you play in Splinter Twin because your opponent plays Abrupt Decay. And I do know, I mean, recently in testing in a tournament last week, a local tournament, somebody went Sarkhan, barbecue a dude next turn, make him a guy, attack you, Restoration Angel, reset his counters, barbecue another dude. So Magic Christmas Land does happen in Modern with Sarkhan.
Oh, definitely. I feel like he's the kind of planeswalker that he intersects he's what every planeswalker should be from a financial perspective.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, he's a throwback, so there's been another Sarkhan planeswalker.
He has the word dragon in the title.
He's dragon in the title, he turns into a dragon. He passes the first planeswalker test, which is, can he defend himself on an empty board? Yes, he can kill any creature that could have otherwise probably killed him. The fact that his turn into a dragon ability increases his loyalty is, I think, that's what sells me on him, because turn 1 he comes down, he goes up to 5 loyalty and hits your opponent for 4. And he's also indestructible in combat. That little text in there makes a big difference. Then the thing is, next turn you hit him for 4 again. The turn after that, you can cash him in for his emblem.
How much do we really want to spend on? How much time do we want to spend on this guy? Because honestly, the community's not really split on this guy. The community can't really decide what to make of Sorin.
Okay, let's talk about Sorin then.
I'm in a Twitter argument right now about. Well, it's not really an argument, but I'm in a Twitter debate about Sorin right now. I kind of think he's terrible. I realize it's not that I don't understand the arguments people are making in favor of him. I think people have blinders on and they want him to be the old Soren too much. Like, I like the fact that he has a temporary anthem, but he does nothing to make sure that he can expose himself to the upside of his plus ability. So his plus ability is you make that temporary anthem, and it lasts until the beginning of your next turn, so you can basically buff your blockers, which is relevant. It's one of the better end of turn anthem effects they've printed. But the fact that his minus makes a creature and rather than his plus, which is what we saw in the old Soren, I think is a gigantic liability. And the fact that you have to be playing creatures because he doesn't make them. He's not making a bunch of creatures and then you're like, all right, I'll get an emblem like the old Soren. So control decks really want his emblem. You know, his emblem is very good in control decks, but you're pumping his +1 for nothing in a control deck because you can't minus him to make a dude the turn you lay him down unless you are already winning the game because ankle shanker or something's just going to come and kill him. So he seems like a really clunky card. I realize how good his ultimate is, but I just don't think he has
his
a
ultimate
deck.
is that good. His ultimate's fine.
It seems it's very miserable.
His ultimate is the Abyss, but like what you were saying, he doesn't make creatures and as his primary. That's a backup plan. Because I don't want to pay 4 mana for a pair of 4/4 flyers. That's not, or 2/2 flyers. I'd pay 4 mana for 4/4 flyers all day. Mm-hmm. Like he should be the top end of an aggressive token strategy, where you're okay if you get in for 1 hit with +1/+1 lifelink. Like that's the criteria I see.
The token generator right now is Hordling Outburst, and that's not in the right colors.
Exactly.
Well, it puts you in Mardu, and it's not like Mardu now is harder than like Orzhov was in Innistrad with the mana fixing we had then.
I feel like we should, at this point, just stop evaluating cards based on their colors and just evaluate on pure synergy, because the mana fixing is so good in this format. Like, yeah, you'll hit some speed bumps, but like just because the Hordling Outburst is double red and this guy's white-black, we have so much mana fixing we don't even care.
You know what I'm surprised that we haven't seen yet that we're used.
What's that?
Like, we're used to seeing a 5-color deck by now.
It'll happen. Totally.
Every time the mana is this good, and there are so many like tricolored spells that are amazing, this set has got a Cruel Ultimatum.
What is it though? I was looking for the Cruel Ultimatum. Is it empty?
I don't really know. Maybe it's Empty the Pits. I'm not really sure what it is.
Villainous Wealth for X = 5 is a pretty good spell.
Oh God, I know. Brian David Marshall called the spell Nemesis Wave, and I think that's the best nickname I've ever heard for a card.
So
that card could be a Cruel Ultimatum contender.
Oh yeah, it's very good when you hit it, when you resolve it. Here's the thing though, and this goes back to one thing we were talking about earlier. I've gotten a couple people who want us to talk about Temur breaking out, and the Force Spike that turns into a counterspell or a negate rather is really good. And you also have Disdainful Stroke, which counters something 4 or greater, and those are both very good.
What's the name of that 1 mana counterspell? I'm drawing a blank.
The Force Spike that turns into a Disdainful Magic card?
Well, I can't believe I'm just totally drawing a blank on this.
Let's type counter and ferocious into Google.
Anyway, I've just embarrassed everybody in the world.
No, like, I'm so bad with cards. Anyone that listens to Brainstorm Brewery knows that I just draw blank on card names all the time. And we cut, like, huge pauses out, and it's still apparent that I blank on card names.
Yeah. So while we're figuring that out, I want to talk about Empty the Pits for just a second, because I think that ignoring... I wrote this in an Insider Alert a little while
Adamant
back.
negation.
Ignoring the quad black and the mana cost is something we can do because of Urborg. And this is the kind of card where you consider it a 4 mana instant, and whatever extra mana you have above that is just gravy. But I feel like there is a deck that uses early drops like Nyx Weaver to stock the graveyard and to stay alive. Maybe even uses the Fetch Land and Courser engine to populate the graveyard more, and then do a bunch of stuff, maybe counter some spells, play some removal, because Black's got all the great removal. And then once you've traded 1-for-1 with removal, maybe gotten some 2-for-1s with Bile Blight or whatever, you end step Empty the Pits for X = 6 and just crush them on your next turn. And then maybe you untap and play Sorin and get another few points of damage and a monster life swing. That could be the use case for Sorin, and that could also be the use case for Empty the Pits in one deck. But I don't know.
Now here's another part. The blue-black control strategy is it's very greedy with Delve. We were playing some test games online earlier today against those sorts of decks. So they'll be like, Murderous Cut Your Guy, Divination restock, Hero's Downfall, Jace's Ingenuity restock, try and jam an Ashiok, try and protect it. They have to spend a whole lot of mana, but they typically always have an answer, but they don't have a great closer, which brings me to Pearl Lake Ancient. We have gotten some tips that this is at least appearing on sideboards at the Pro Tour.
I love this card.
There'll be people trying these kinds of control decks, and Pearl Lake Ancient is a dumb, obvious, stupid solution to the mirror, but it gets the job done. So, Pearl Lake Ancient, I had bought a couple sets earlier today at 99 cents as a mythic. This is something I'm going to be watching.
That guy's a mythic?
Yeah,
wow.
Very low downside on that guy at $1. I mean, you look at it, you can buy list it for 75 cents, so the spread is only 24%. I mean, if you're listening now and you really feel like you got to get a taste of the finance and speculation game, pick up your set of Pearl Lake Ancient now, because you'll spend $4 and then you can sell them for $3 if you have to.
There's almost no downside because it can't go much lower than it is right now.
Absolutely.
So I really like a low risk spec, especially if you're just getting started.
This is a great small bankroll spec too. Like, we have a lot of people who go, "What can I do with $20?" And the answer is not much most of the time. But this is the time where $20 gets you a couple playsets of this guy, and you're not exposing yourself to the downside of like what happens if this doesn't go up. Your maximum loss is 25%.
Yeah, and here's another quick point too. Alex Combs asked, "What should I be picking up on MTGO?" When we had asked our one of our resident MTGO geniuses yesterday what we should do with this Pro Tour, and he said, "Look, a lot of cards will spike for maybe 48 hours tops on Magic Online, because this is a release weekend, so there's going to be a whole lot of cons being open this weekend." He said his advice: stay away from cons. M15 boosters are going to be where it's at right now. They are at a pretty low price right now. I think he said they were about 2.25 tickets, and their expected price should be back up around 3 to 3.5 in a month. So those are a good pickup right now, but it's one of those counterintuitive things about how sometimes the Pro Tour isn't going to affect Magic Online at all, or maybe it's not a good time to be buying in. So
it's very volatile, is what I'm hearing from.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, if you want to get in on Magic Online speculating, absolutely you got to give like the insider service and our insider forum on Magic Online a try, because I defer to the experts on this. People like Matthew Lewis and people like Sylvain Lehew are very, very good at this, and they understand it in a very intuitive way about like the booster pack cycles, for example, and what release events do. And M15 could go up a whole lot in value this weekend because of Hornet Queen, because of Scuttling Doom Engine, because if Rabblemaster is in everything, Rabblemaster could potentially hit 30. So the value of an M15 pack on Monday will probably be, to some degree, higher than it is right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Did we want to talk Teamer?
Teamer, so I have been impressed by Savage Knuckleblade in ways that I did not expect. Like, that guy's still good on later turns than turn 2. The Get Bigger thing is pretty good. It punches through a lot. The problem we found with the deck is that you almost want to be running like a Divination post board against the decks that have a lot of 1-for-1 removal, because they'll be able to replenish and get a Murderous Cut or a Hero's Downfall for every Polukranos you play, which was what we were finding. So you end up you have no steam left, and then you end up drawing your lands and you fizzle out.
Well, when I saw Savage Knuckleblade, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you were talking.
Guy that raids to become a 3/3 when he attacks, and that is a really good early game drop, because like this format is defined by Death Touch, I think, because there are just really big dudes. So the curve looks nice.
Yeah, Death Touch is surprisingly relevant right now. I was not
also
expecting
relevant
that at
is
all.
this chat's kind of weird. I can't hear when you guys are talking.
Has that just started, or has that been going on?
No, that's been going on. I just like when I launch into something, I have to guess nobody else is talking. So if it sounds like I'm being a dick, it's just like it's kind of how the platform's working out.
Usually you're an
So
intentional jerk.
yeah, what I was saying earlier about the kind of Magic that doesn't get played anymore, I think the guy who wanted to talk about Teamer brought up Adamant Negation and God, what's the other one? I forgot the other one. The thing
There's
encounters
Stubborn
something from
Smile and
four.
Disdainful Stroke are the two cheap counter spells.
Yeah. Um. You know the thing about that is you kind of want some. You don't need the divination if you're countering their 1-for-1 removal and keeping your guy alive. Savage Knuckleblade is so easy to keep alive,
Mm-hmm.
and he has so much upside. Just pumping mana into him. So like you can play your aggro control. If you played just a Savage Knuckleblade and never played another creature the rest of the game, you can kill them fairly easily.
So we had actually one of those experiences playing against one of those grinding control decks earlier today, and the guy had to blow a Bile Blight, Hero's Downfall, and Murderous Cut to kill one Savage Knuckleblade on the stack at once.
And then your
Wow.
hand fills up.
Mm-hmm.
Your hand fills up while he's doing all that crap, and then you lay a Sagu Mauler, and they go, oh well, GG.
Yeah, and Saga Mahler got brought up. Somebody wanted to talk about that. It's $1.50 now. It's been a boring card since day one because all it does is trample and hexproof. And I mean, it's kind of like, we had this card. It was Simic Sky Swallower. So it seems boring on paper, but it's a really reliable card. And it's like when you are running that gambit of is this a Morph Rattleclaw Mystic or is this a Sagu Mauler, that's something that is terrifying for control players.
I don't know, man. The best tech I ever saw in Magic probably was a player from Michigan named Jason Blackwood put Simic Signet into Blue-Red Tron back in the day so he could summon Simic Sky Swallower.
Wow.
In a Blue-Red Tron deck. Like, nobody saw that coming. Because I think that the deck was running Kega at that point. And Kega's good, but like everybody was running small, shitty creatures back then. So, like, your Kega would block Moloku, and then you would just get murdered by tokens. Versus the Simic Sky Swallower, like, just houses those Moloku decks.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I don't know if that's what we're seeing now, a similar thing to that, but I think Sagu Mauler has always been a card that a lot of people were really high on. I was kind of not very bullish on it at first because I just wanted to be doing Knuckleblade shenanigans, but you definitely need a Curve Topper, and I was like, oh, well, you got Pelucranos. But I think Sagu Mauler definitely has a place, and we were talking about the Rattleclaw Mythic shenanigans, where, is that a Sagu Mauler? Is that a late top deck Rattleclaw? What is it? So I think Sagu Mauler, even at its current price, has some upside. I think there probably will be a Teamer deck just because maybe that's optimism on my part because I really want someone to attempt the old style of aggro control.
Yeah,
Stick a Knuckleblade, then protect it with counter magic.
Yeah, there was a deck that was blue-green back in Urza's Saga called Control, which ran Mana Leak and Albino Troll.
Yeah.
The same sort of idea, like run out a big dude and protect it. I mean, Sagu Mauler makes an opponent, like, if you have 5 mana and they have 5 mana and they tap low to play Jace, and they tap themselves out of being able to counter your stuff, they will just lose to a Mauler coming into play. And that's terrifying.
Yeah, that card's crazy.
Yeah, and I think, the thing is it's boring. People look at that and they're going to say, I'm not going to pay $5 for a card that just has Trample and Hex.
It's a slightly better Terra Stomper, come on.
Yeah.
Oh man, Terra Stomper.
Yeah, that card went up for no reason. That shows that, like, Terra Stomper went up because people on Reddit are bad at finance. That's what I think.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just looking at Sagu Mauler and thinking about you're going to play that in decks with Rattleclaw Mystic, and we haven't talked about the fact that the morph dynamic is going to add value here. Because if you flip that Mauler with its hexproof, you're countering a spell. And you're blowing them out with a 6/6 Trampler. But if they target your Rattleclaw Mystic thinking it's the Mauler, like, you can run that late game bluff all day long.
And here's another crazy thing about Sagu Mauler, is it dodges Disdainful Stroke when you morph it. So your opponent can't even counter it. Like, if you have 8 mana and you draw your opponent, you roll out that morph, your opponent, if they're playing like a blue-black deck, they have to stop that morph because you can flip it into Sagu Mauler in response to anything.
That's a really good point.
When you morph it out, it can't be stroked away. So having that as a late game 8 mana gonna roll this thing out is pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know that I want to be buying them at $2. The
Yeah, I
spread
don't
is
think I do.
straight 50%. But it's one of those things where if I'm at FNM tonight and someone's got a few in their binder, I might try to get 2 for 3 and trade.
F&M started 2 hours ago.
I'm in Central Time. My FNMs generally don't start till 7. Anyway.
That's cool.
So we've also got people who want us to talk about Hornet Queen, which we should. I think this may end up there's probably a chance that this is going to end up being Pro Tour Hornet Queen. I mean,
really think so?
I think so. I think because, and here are some of the indicators. Drown in Sorrow is showing up everywhere on sideboards. Being able to put out 5 guys that guaranteed will kill their attackers is so good. Like Hornet Queen and the Green Devotion Mirror, it's who can jam more Hornet Queens. Abzan Reanimator is running whips so that they can whip back a Hornet Queen. Like, this card has a lot of stuff going on with it, and I would kind of rather have a standard format or Pro Tour defined by Hornet Queen than defined by Nettle Sentinel, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. You want to talk about Whip? Do we want to talk about Whip at all? Like, I think Hornet Queen, like...
Now, Whip, like, all that equipment was in those, like, decks, so there's not a lot of upside for any of that equipment, I don't think.
Yeah, and Whip is just, if you bought Whip when it came out at $3 thinking it was going to go up, you've been disappointed for the entirety of Whip's existence.
Yes.
I thought that card was going to be $5 or $10 easily, and it has never impressed me.
Though, now remember, the card is now over a year old. The retail price is under $2, but the spread is only 35%. Mm-hmm. So I think that there might not be a lot left in terms of its downside. Obviously, the problem is it's legendary, so you don't want to run a lot of them. But it's one of those things where it's an engine. Plain and
now, Jason, here's my question to you: Is Hornet Queen hitting $15?
I mean,
good showing this weekend. Let's
good showing. Like the problem is Hornet Queen was essentially garbage, and a lot of dealers have a ton of copies of this because when everybody was busting counter punches to get at those scavenging oozes, the rest of the cards in there were like just I have a stack of Hornet Queens just from like not being able to sell them after I popped a bunch of $30 counter punches years ago.
There's a lot of inventory still there.
So I think that'll dry up, but I think once that dries up, I don't know. It would have to be pretty ubiquitous. But if you look at Goblin Rabblemaster, there are extra copies of Rabblemaster from the buy a box, and I had $20. So I think 15 on Hornet Queen's probably not. It's a little unreasonable, but like I wouldn't tear my hair out and say I know nothing about finance if it did hit that price.
And if I'm holding Hornet Queen right now, I'm not selling it at $5 per on eBay or trading it away. I'm not getting rid of Hornet Queen right now. Like post Pro Tour, even if it has a middling showing, Hornet Queen's still going to be a thing. I still probably would hold it all the way up to $10.
So let me ask
just the amount of. Oh man, I almost said the amount of buzz it's generating. I would have thrown up in my own mouth if I'd actually said that. The amount of excitement this card is generating, there's got to be something to it because people wouldn't be talking so much about it. People on the floor, people who have buddies at the Pro Tour, and anybody who's got a friend in Honolulu right now, that people are talking about Hornet Queen.
Here's a question. You asked, does it go to 10? Does it go to 15? Does it go to 20? I don't think that there's any chance this goes to 20, let alone 15. What do you need to see by the end of Sunday to make Hornet Queen past $10? What's the outcome?
2 decks in the top 8. I don't know.
How many copies across 2 decks?
6 plus.
So 3 or 4 in 2 decks that make top 8.
Yeah, I think
here's what matters more. Here's what matters
top
more.
16 probably
has to show up across 2 archetypes.
Oh yeah, not just a mono green devotion type
deal. You have to remember,
yeah.
Something like Mantis Rider is only played in 1 archetype. It's very, very good. It is only in Jeskai decks. It will only be $5 to $8. Rabblemaster is good in anything that plays red, and if you're not playing red, splash red for it. You have mana confluence and no excuse. Like, Rabblemaster commands $20 because it is a pan-format staple. Sylvan Caryatid is 17. Courser is 19. Those are all cards that show up in every deck that can play them. And Hornet Queen does not. It has no place in a Teamer deck, for example. It is very good in Abzan, it's very good in Mono Green, but you've got to see a strong showing on both of those decks, I think, in the top 8 to see Hornet Queen really go up.
You know what we expected to see, and we haven't? A deck that could Chord of Calling for Hornet Queen. We haven't really seen a Chord deck.
We have seen.
Chord might be the best Magic card that isn't getting played.
Yeah, we have seen a few preliminary Chord lists come out. I had always, in Modern, you Chord of Calling for Eternal Witness and get it back for free, which is really cool. You could do that with, I believe it's Warden of the Eye, but that puts you in 4 mana or 4 different colors, and that's yucky. But somebody gutsier than me is going to try that. I have seen Chord decks bouncing around, and they do typically run. I think even funnier than Hornet Queen is a Hornet Nest. Like, if your opponent attacks with a Segu Mauler, and in response you Chord of Calling for Hornet Nest. Well, I guess because it has Trample, it doesn't really do a whole lot, but.
So can I point out that Chord of Calling, the M15 version at least, is literally at an all-time low?
I mean, that's not super surprising. It really underperformed.
Well, I don't know if a lot of people have been keeping up with it. Like, people don't necessarily realize that this thing has dropped by 40-ish% since pre-sales.
I don't know if you guys caught my insider email about Onslaught fetches a while back. I had the 2-4-1 principle on that, and it is just delightful and scary to see it play through again. Here's the principle. A card, before it is reprinted, if it's a chase like Chord of Calling or a fetch land, it is worth, Chord was worth $30. It is the Ravnica, or the original Chord of Calling, has dropped to, I believe, $15 now. Kelly, you can pull it up and prove me wrong. And the new one is $7.50, which is nearly an exact ratio of 4 to 2 to 1. See, $15. Yep. So it is a nearly exact 4 to 2 to 1 ratio, and this proves up with reprints of chases. Chord of Calling, the original, lost half its value. The new one is half the value of the old one, and it's like Darren Aronofsky pie kind of stuff when you realize this happens. I mean, it happened with. I think it happened with Path to Exile, Meddling Mage, Primeval Titan. Thoughtseize is a huge example. Thoughtseize was, I think, $68 TCG mid before it was reprinted. Now the original is about $32.
Time out for a second.
42 to 1 to 1. That's the Fibonacci sequence. Holy shit.
Can we pause this for a second to clarify? Because I think I lost you there, and maybe the other guys did too. 4, 2, 1, 1. Is that the rule?
No, it's 4-2-1.
4-2-1. In the simplest terms, what are those numbers representing?
Okay, let me just put it the other way. We'll say 1 to 2 to 4 if you want to backward engineer it. The cost of a Chord of Calling now, the reprinted one, is $7.50. The cost of an old one is 2 times that, so it's $15. The cost of the old one before it was reprinted was 4 times the cost of the current reprint one, so it was $30. So you can do the math from both sides, and you can figure that if a card is reprinted, the original copy will lose half its value, and the new one will retail for a quarter of what the previous value was. So let me say Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is $17 now from Theros. It was $68 when it was in Lorwyn. The Lorwyn copy dropped from $68 to about $35, nearly exactly half, and the new one is half of the old one's original price. It's I hope you followed along. I hope people who are listening followed along.
Okay, I think I've got it, and I'll try to explain it back to you to make sure I didn't screw it up. So, a card is worth some amount of money, and then gets reprinted. The original version, like before the reprint, drops by 50%, and the reprinted version is worth half of what the original version is worth now. So, for the amount of money I could have paid for one Chord of Calling pre-reprint, I can buy a playset of new ones, or 2 old ones. So, is that accurate?
Yeah.
And that bears out across. Does Mutavault? Does that work for Mutavault?
Is there a price threshold where that breaks down, like anything under $10 or?
You know, we looked at the banner cards because we originally did this research for the fetch lands. So we looked at the other banner cards that were reprinted. I haven't looked at how far it breaks down into like the little stuff. Like I don't think it wasn't. Honestly wasn't worth my time to look at Nantuko Shade.
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
I think down the line, when we do a little more structuring on the data that we have, and this is something I haven't talked a lot about to even insiders, but we have a huge, huge warehouse of awesome financial data, and with a little bit of concerted effort over the course of an afternoon, we could probably get a report that shows us before and after prices and lets us really dig deep into this. So that's something I'd like to look at later on this year and see if we can turn that into a rule.
Well, I think that really is going to matter on cards that are reprinted to bring their price down. Like, they didn't really want Thoughtseize in Standard, but God, Thoughtseize needed to get reprinted. It was $75. Like, that's insane. You can't say, hey, there's a $300 barrier to every black deck in Modern, and it's Thoughtseize. It's a non-mythic. Well, it's from the pre-mythic era, but you know what I mean. Like, it's insane to have that sort of a barrier. So they needed to reprint Thoughtseize. They kind of needed to reprint Fetchlands. They kind of needed to reprint Court of Calling. Court of Calling was too much money.
Yeah.
That's not a $30 card. It shouldn't be a $30 card because it was like $2 before people started noticing it. So when the stuff needs to get reprinted and they reprint it to control the price, I think that 1-2-4 principle is going to apply in probably nearly all cases, except Tarmogoyf. That was a 1-1-1-1 thing where it got reprinted, and the old one is the same price, and the new one's the same price as the old one, and
I think
everybody in Vegas was really sad.
Yeah, if everybody's wondering what's going on the Pro Tour right now, everybody's eating lunch or dinner, depending. I guess it's 6 p.m. in Honolulu or 7 p.m., so they're eating. Or
we have not seen any Standard yet.
they're eating lunch now, but we are not yet in Standard. We are waiting for Standard. We had a question about when's the right time to buy a spec that shows up on camera. So Amulet of Vigor is something to talk about. Matthias Hunt was playing it at one of the recent Modern Grand Prix or Pro Tours. We had known that he was on that deck, so we had timed an alert to go up basically right when he went on camera. He did not perform well because but he was like in it to the end. He had blown counting up his mana for Summoner's Pact and was one short after casting 2 in a turn and lost top 8ing. And basically, as soon as people saw like how crazy the Summer Bloom Amulet of Vigor Primeval Titan deck looks, people were buying it, and Amulet of Vigor disappeared from the internet rather shortly.
So look at the graph I just pulled up, and that should answer a lot of questions too.
Yeah.
Thank you for MTG Stocks for plotting these delicious graphs, but I mean, this is a rule that I've noticed, which is that when you get insane short-term hype, the peak of the hype and the floor where it started, generally about where it settles right after is about 50%, and then it starts decaying back down to its original price very, very slowly if it's not a sustainable long-term thing. Like Amulet Vigor now is not significantly more than it was before that Pro Tour.
Yeah, and you know,
I think you should make sure that the person actually wants to be on that deck after this weekend. Because I think wasn't it Jan Vandervate that was playing that Fist of Suns deck, and he's like, I would never play this deck.
Oh
again.
yeah.
That's important too, as a context. You know, is this this is the kind of deck that's a one-trick pony that you bring to an event because you know no one's prepared for it, and that's the only reason it's viable. If anyone realizes that you're on this and that it's a popular deck, it stops being popular. So identifying those.
There are a couple of players locally who are very good with it. That it's a very strong deck. You'll go EXO with it. You know, if it's a Thoughtseize format and a Path to Exile format, you won't have a good time. Otherwise, you will. We did have a question from Austin in the chat room. He asks what we think of Butcher of the Horde, and let me give you my quick thought on that. Butcher of the Horde has a lot of power to it. I like it. Obviously, it reminds me of Abyssal Persecutor, Desecration Demon. That thing hits hard. Here's the issue: Mardu doesn't have a great deck right now. Hordling Outburst, you know, I want to go Hordling Outburst turn 3, Butcher turn 4. That would be an amazing path. The issue is that like white and black aren't offering a whole lot right now that make being in those colors great. And I don't think you should be in Mardu just for Butcher of the Horde and Hordling Outburst, even though I guess you get a cute thematic name. with the Hordling thing. I like Butcher. I really want that card to go up. It's at $5 right now. I'm not buying. I see the ceiling on it. You know, we talked about Mantis Rider. Is Butcher the Horde going to go higher than Mantis Rider? I doubt it. I
No,
absolutely doubt it.
not a chance.
Well,
And here's-
if it does, it would have to go down first. So I don't think this is when you want to buy in regardless, because it's going to be a tougher card to solve. Because you need stuff to sacrifice to it. You know what I want to be sacrificing to him? Bloodghast, Stranglerootgeist. You know, that's the kind of stuff I want to be sacking to him. There's nothing really in Mardu. Like, you going to sack an Ankle Shanker?
Yeah, I mean, like Rabble Master going into Butcher is really, really, really good.
Yeah, if you get those Goblin tokens, absolutely. And that you have to. They're expendable because Rabble Master makes them swing every turn anyway. So yeah, that's a good point. Like Rabble Master is turning into a Tarmogoyf.
Yeah.
My God, everyone's like, hey, take Mono Blue Control and add some Rabble Masters. Call it Mono Rebel Control.
Well, and here's a real weird question to ask about Butcher the Horde too. Is a 5/4 flying haste life linker with vigilance playable in Magic, in Modern or in Standard right now? And
undoubtedly.
It may not be that easy of a question because if you're attacking with that guy and the opponent has like a 9/9 Genesis Hydra that just flipped into a Pelucranos, then there's like not a whole lot you're going to be doing about that thing. I mean, you can Austin on the chat room. Definitely Bloodsoaked Champion helps fuel that. Do you want to be spending 2 black each turn to get a Vigilance lifelink flyer going through?
That sounds like something you do in Limited. He's like, I pulled that game of Limited out because I had the Bloodsoaked Champion to keep sacking a Butcher and swing with a lifelink every turn.
And it does seem cool. I mean, we like those kinds of engines. I just remember, like, Butcher the Horde he requires an upfront investment. Like, if you blow 2 Goblin tokens into him and then attack and they have Utter End or a Hero's Downfall, then that's sad.
Yeah. It's really situational, but the power is there.
I really like him in Kalia decks. So like the foils probably have upside, but I think you got to wait a long time.
Well, and he was for what it matters, a pre-release foil. Either you would have a 1 in 8 chance of getting him if you pulled Mardu. So
I don't think that affects the price nearly enough. So there's a question in chat that I really want to answer that I didn't get a chance to answer in chat, which was, this is my first Pro Tour, or first time speccing in any capacity. Standard is starting soon. Any advice for the next hour? And the follow-up, thinking of buying into 4 Hornet Queens at $6 a piece. Is that a rookie mistake? My response to that is there's probably a better place for your money than $6 Hornet Queens, even if the upside is $10. I think that after fees and stuff, unless you can trade them out at $10 into stuff you can buy list or stuff below retail, I think you're going to have to work to get your money out of that. So
don't buy such big eggs if you have such a little basket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say you can expose yourself to more upside by
buying. What
buying.
do you do for $25 if this is your first time watching the Pro Tour and speccing?
To answer that, I'm pulling up Trader Tools right now, and I'm looking at all the cards in cons that have a low spread and are uncommon. Because if you buy a card for 10 cents that jumps to 50 cents, and you happen to have a stack of 100 of them, you're looking at $50 for a $10 investment.
Well, remember we were talking about Painseer? Painseer it's not a Bob because there's no reliable way to tap and untap him. People are talking about Daring Thief, and somebody on Reddit asked me like 6 months ago or something ridiculous like about Daring Thief, and I'm like, nah, I think he's got the same problem Painseer does. He's like, aha, Daring Thief is now worth lots of money. You were wrong. I was like, I guess you correctly predicted the printing of Jeskai Ascendancy. Congrats. I actually kind of like.
It's not worth money right now. It's a near bulk rare.
No, but he said it's creeping up and it's starting to, it's gonna.
That was because
it's top 8 list. It's like some of the Japanese are top 8ing with it. Like it's in the Ascendancy deck. I think it's got it's upside finally. So yeah, at bulk, I might buy a couple sets of that just because if anyone does anything with Jeskai Ascendancy, like that's a very good card that gets coupled with that. So if I had $25, I would probably spend 4 of those $25 buying 4 playsets of Daring Thief.
Really? You wouldn't try to diversify any?
Well, that's why I would spend 4 of the $25.
Oh, sorry, I misheard you.
Yeah, you sure did, Kelly.
I'm a dummy. Right. So, Doug, you were saying you were pulling up the uncommons with what? What was your spread criteria?
Yeah, so let me give you an example. Like the
I'm pulling it up on Trader Tools for the crowd here.
yeah, and so for example, I mean, Treasure Cruise sells for 12 cents on list, and buys for 15. I mean, that's a low risk one. The Trilands, so Opulent Palace, Sandstone Citadel or Sandstep Citadel, those kinds of things, that like the Alara style Trilands are they are so good for medium term value because people are they're gonna be fine paying $1 for Mystic Monastery, things like that.
You know, those Shards Trilands were like one of my first Magic Finance calls ever. I was when Evan Irwin interviewed me in 2009 on the Magic Show. I was like, these Trilands are under $0.25. You just take it as many as you can, and they did. They ended up going to $1.
Yeah, and I mean the spread on them is pretty bad because it's a 68% spread on them, which is rough. But you know, they're good. You buy them at 50 cents, and then you know that you're going to be able to get $1 out of them.
I'm just pulling up all the commons and uncommons and cons that buy list for 10 cents or more, which is something I love to do in Trader Tools. Abzan Falconer apparently is a card with a 25% spread, which is a very interesting card. But like, we have Chief of the Edge, Despise, Jeskai Charm, some of the Trilands. Like, these are some places where you might be able to find value if you want to buy a bunch of them.
See, I don't know, like, every time I look at those Edge guys, I think Hamlet Captain. And nobody made any money off of Hamlet Captain ever.
Yeah, he wasn't a 3-2 for 2 though. And he didn't. These guys don't need to attack themselves and put themselves at risk. It's a fine comparison, but I think it's just a little off.
Well, there's like what Veteran Armorsmith or whatever was in M10 as well. There's like there's all these like, I think everybody wants the next Imperious Perfect or Wizened Sen, and I don't know if they're quite gonna make something that good.
I mean, if you want to be shocked, look up what Gold Meadow Knight is.
Yeah. Gold Meadow Harrier, the Knight of the Meadowgrain?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Knight of the Meadowgrain's nutty, and that's been printed a gajillion times.
So real quick on the
2 or 3
on the core set guys that you were talking about, the Veteran Armorsmith is junk. It's a 2-3 for 2. Veteran Swordsmith was a 3-2 for 3, and with the same basic ability. It's
negative
actually,
spread.
Yeah. Like that's what I'm saying. This is a common, not an uncommon. This is the kind of thing where like people.
If you want to make 3 cents right now, you're looking at it right here.
There's no way you can execute a transaction that will make money, but like when you're picking a collection, this is the kind of card you want to know about. So as a basis for comparison, this is instead of paying 2 colorless, you're paying single black. I think there are better warriors in Standard than there were soldiers in that era of Magic. And since we've got this tricolor theme going on, the double color doesn't really bother me. I'm just, this is a few years old, but it's got a similar price tag to a current uncommon that you can probably pull out of draft reject piles. That's just what I want to keep my eye on. I don't think it's going to make a good showing here at the Pro Tour, but I think it's something that people should be aware of.
No, but we're talking about like stuff for you can pick off draft tables, and I've definitely got boxes of long-term holds of stuff I just found for free that I know is going to buy list for like a dime or a quarter in the future. And if you have like 100 of those, it was worth picking them up and not throwing them away. So I don't know, the Edge guys could get there, but every time I see a Hamlet Captain and I look that up on Trader Tools thinking like it's going to be worth buy listing, I'm always sad.
The Edge guys, they do have the advantage that it is a Watch Wolf. It is a 3-2 for 2, the guy who bumps power. And that's aggressively costed.
Yeah, I think that the Chief of the Edge is... You can probably ignore the 2-3 guy unless you need a critical mass.
I would ignore the 2-3 guy. But for example, I think
his
Hordling Outburst makes warrior tokens.
Mm.
No, I don't believe it does, actually, because that's too good. But there are some things that make warrior tokens that are relevant.
I like Hordling Outburst.
They're not warriors. Hordling Outburst is a card that's on the watch list for me right now. There's no buy list price on it, and it's one of the best goblin-making token cards ever made.
Krenko and Perforos decks in EDH love to run these kind of spells, and I think foils of this were... I got every foil Hordling Outburst I could get at the pre-release.
I had seen that for a while at least they were only $1 on TCG as foils, and I think that's a miscosted, undercosted card. I'm going to look it up right now.
I mean, who's thinking about that kind of thing right now, though?
Which card? Hordling Outburst?
Foil Hordling Outburst.
Wow, okay.
Because I think it's more likely to impact EDH than it is standard. I could be wrong.
There's no buy. We don't have any buy prices on it right now.
So the foil median price is $250 right now, so it's gone up a bit.
That sounds about right for someone that's seeing zero play. And
that's not uncommon.
Yeah, again, that's another card where if you can get them really cheap, I don't know if they're going to make a showing at the Pro Tour, but like it seems like it's on a different power level than a lot of other cards that have been printed like it at its current rarity.
Well, I mean, it's one more red mana and one more goblin than Goblin Fodder or Krenko's Command.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what you want. That's 6 damage with a Perforos. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, like a lot of the Perforos EDH decks are just a Krenko deck. You know, you somehow hope you get Krenko. You're playing Nora the Wary, and you're just playing stupid. Make a bunch of tokens, and then Perforos is great for pumping them. So
let's actually let's move away from this card because I think there's a lot we need to see about it.
We had a question about Crater's Claws in chat. Crater's Claws is the fireball that gets a little bigger if you have Ferocious. We have had history of burn spells getting to be $5 or $10 in standard. Banefire and Demon Fire both were up there.
I think they have to be uncounterable to get that be worth that much money, though.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know, because you know it's not like Demon Fire's competing with it because we only have one that's legal in standard.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is just ancient history at this point, but I remember D2 Fire was a non-zero amount of money, but that was back when Magic was bad and old and overcosted.
That was back when you could play foil and thwart in standard. Get 2 Fire was, playable as an instant was worth it. Crater's Claws is good because it can be a shock if you need a shock.
Mm-hmm. And here's another thing too. We had found this out again in testing was that if an opponent has a Planeswalker out and you want to avoid Disdainful Stroke, then you can X equals 2 on that and you can still deal 4 damage to kill a Planeswalker or pop a guy away and still avoid that counterspell.
Nice.
So I see that it is about $1 to buy, give or take. I think it's a little ambitious to be getting into Crater's Claws right now. It is only good in the Teamer deck because Mardu is not going to be coming up with... Neither the Mardu or Jeskai decks are going to be typically having enough guys to go Ferocious on it. I mean, I do like that it's one of the few X spells that will actually deal more damage than the X that you punch into it. And it can close things out quickly.
Let's talk about Siege Rhino for a second, because I'm watching the coverage, and they're going through cons cards here, and Siege Rhino's a hell of a powerful card, especially in a format with Pain lands, where untapped lands are going to be at a premium.
Well, Siege Rhino
I like Rhino.
It's just, I mean, everybody knows it's good. It's defining an Abzan deck. I'm seeing on the feed that it was originally costed just white, black, green, and
my God,
they made it a little bit bigger when they bumped the cost. I think it's still pretty good for 4 mana. It's format defining in a way that like you have to have something that can survive swinging into a 4/5 and kill it. Just like Courser of Crucifix is defining in a way that if your deck only tops out at 3 power, you're not going to get around to Courser for the most part.
And then, to be fair, this guy does smash through Courser on the same the turn after he comes out. Which is
there's very little upward movement on it. I mean, 635, it's the Mantis Rider principle. Siege Rhino isn't playing anything aside from the Abzan deck.
So here's a question then. Let's invert the common question we ask. What needs to happen this weekend, or more importantly, what needs to be conspicuously absent for the current price to be too high? As in, if you have these, and this goes back to a question Sigmund asked a while back, which is, what are some cards and what are some things that need to happen this weekend in order for you to go, oh, it's time to sell this card? Because cards don't drop nearly as fast as they spike.
Jeskai Ascendancy.
What about it?
If it so there's a Japanese list with it that tries to play a token game, a fair token game, and also has the combination that'll bounce your opponent's board in it. And then there's just the straight combo version. I think people are looking at this like it's going to be the next Splinter Twin. It's going to be the combo deck that wrecks Standard. People think that it's going to be the combo deck that wrecks Modern, which it is not. I think that if you see Jeskai Ascendancy, just blow it. You know, no appearances, nobody serious playing it, so you can't even depend on an article coming out about it.
Yeah.
Man, I don't see that card sustaining a whole lot of price based on either Modern or Standard.
If it doesn't perform. And
Yeah,
it could perform. So one of the things that one of the pieces of information we got fed from the floor is that Jeskai Ascendancy is a deck. It's bursty. It is not necessarily reliable, but it's good, and it's very matchup dependent, which tells me that $5 is right unless the card and the deck dominate. Like if the top 8 has 12 copies of Jeskai Ascendancy in it, then guess what? Buying it at $5 probably looks smart. But like, I think the time to buy those. I'm gonna check the historical prices real quick. But,
I mean, again, it's the Mantis Rider principle too. I mean, Tolarian Academy
is a different card to me than Mantis
Rider. It's
Rider.
not just the Mind Sculptor. It's not a $100 Standard card that everybody like. It's not going to be distorting Standard. Like Arcbound Ravager during Arcbound Ravager Affinity Tyranny with Skull Clamp was like $25 to $30. And that was a card that you absolutely needed to define a format. It was in a set that wasn't being opened a whole lot. Yeah. And even that's the card that I have to think of. I know that that's probably nearly 10 years ago at this point.
It's a good baseline, though. It's just that's the kind of dominance of Standard Rare. Like Thragtusk is another example. The dominance of a Standard Rare to get it to the $20 price tag. What I'm looking at here is the graph that shows that Jeskai Ascendancy basically started at $1 and then just slowly crept up. So... yeah. So real quick on coverage, they're Randy and BDM are calling Butcher of the Horde the #1 like potential card, and I don't know if everyone else is watching the coverage alongside this, but the chat in there just blew up, and everyone's like, Butcher of the Horde is not good. So I just wanted to bring that up real quick.
Yeah, but who knows if that's people who tested it or I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
The coverage says it's a hard-hitting creature that can take advantage of the many tokens and recursive creatures available to Mardu decks. It's potent with Mardu's Ascendancy, which will generate a token each time it attacks, and the activated ability makes it very strong in a racing situation where each is equally useful. And that's, those are a bunch of tautologies. We know that those.
Mardu Ascendancy is not a constructed playable card.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Well, yeah, Jacob Van Lunen begs to differ because he's scheming about ways to kill people on like turn 3 with Doran. So
I mean, it's funny with Doran. I will give you that.
It's cute. Sometimes cute gets there.
Mardu Ascendancy with Doran is hilarious.
I mean, everybody would like to see Butcher of the Horde be awesome. That's the card that when we were all 11 years old and we were cracking packs and we saw something like Craw Giant in Chronicles and we were like, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to put lure on this. The card's going to get huge. I'm going to wipe everybody's board. That's a kind of Magic that people really think is, like, that's cool. But, like, you really want Magic to be defined and people winning games with a 5/4 flying lifelink vigilance guy that just eats your whole board and demands this insidious price for being powerful. And that's an era of Magic and a sort of wishful thinking that we can't get back to. So of course we're nostalgic for it. I think that we want to get back to that. We want we would rather be winning that way than Jace fate sealing somebody for 9 turns in a row.
Definitely. I think that's probably priced into the card a little bit, which is the optimism of players new and old alike that this card is going to be fun and that it's cool and it's powerful, but it really comes down to it's a very situational card in the so far as that you have to work to make it good. A 5/4, is it 5/4 flying? Its baseline got flying, right? It's 5/4 flying for 4 is still very, very aggressive, but it trades with Siege Rhino if you want it to. But Siege Rhino can't block it. It flies over Courser. It flies over Caryatid. So I think that it's the positioning of it is going to be everything you do with its price.
So somebody wanted us to talk about Glittering Wish. I will talk about that a little bit. The Jeskai Ascendancy deck in Modern is not as good as people think, and I may be biased on that because I play a lot of Splinter Twin recently, and Splinter Twin demolishes that deck. Like, it is not even a winnable matchup for the Jeskai Ascendancy deck. You won't even win a game.
Wow.
And the reason is that you have a whole lot of flash speed cards. You have good counterspells. Sam Party identified this in his Channel Fireball article about it, was that decks that can land like Thoughtseize turn 1, Tarmogoyf turn 2 give it problems because you need to have some disruption backed up with a clock. If you have no disruption, like Vendilion Click is fantastic disruption against it because it is a built-in clock. If you don't have that stuff, then the Ascendancy deck is going to sit there for 6 or 7 turns, and then it's going to just combo off through your counter spells. So you can't be totally reactive, but it's a fair deck. I think it's scary when people talk about, like, well, it can go off on turn 3 undisrupted, but Infect can do that as well. Like, Infect can go turn 1, Glistener Elf, turn 2, fetch land, Groundswell, Mutagenic Growth, kill you. And so there is a turn 2 kill with that already existing in Modern. I mean, and that has not distorted the format. That's not destroyed it because it's reliant on a 1/1 that needs to actually untap.
Well, you know what? Another thing is we're getting real bad testing data out of Moto right now because you can't Glittering Wish for Wear and Tear, so people can't beat the Ascendancy decks because it's bugged. So we have no idea if that's gonna win those games. I've heard people say, yeah, I've heard people say they've won through that, won through multiple Wear and Tears with the Ascendancy deck, and that it's ironclad, but we're not getting good testing data on a Moto because
can I tell you just how
buggy, terrible platform,
frustrating that is? Like,
we're not going to talk about Moto right now. People want to talk about Glittering Wish. We all know how bad it is, but here's the thing about it too. Glittering Wish's role in that deck is one of two things: get the card Jeskai Ascendancy off the sideboard, and then cast it probably the next turn, or find an answer. And right now there's no real great Glittering Wish target like Surak Dragonclaw that people are playing, or a Keranos that you're like, okay, well, you're playing this kind of deck, I won't combo off, I'll just Glittering Wish for a huge ass thing and just like you deal with this now. And they're not really running that. And then the other downside of Glittering Wish is that you've got a sideboard filled with 8 or 10 cards that you're never ever going to board in because you have to support a big Wish board, which means that you're running maybe Swan Song, maybe Leyline of Sanctity, and that's about it that you have realistically to board in. You're playing like a 5-card sideboard, and that's really, really rough.
Yeah.
Can we agree that how much upside? What would Glittering Wish have to do for you to be glad you paid $20?
Nothing. I think that it would have to be the format-defining card in Modern, and then not get reprinted in Modern Masters too.
Yeah,
in short, I don't think it's something I want to be a part of.
And we've had a discussion with insiders about whether this is going to get banned before January. All I say is sit down, play 10 games, pre or post board, whatever you want, against Splinter Twin, and then play against Jund, and ask yourself like whether this deck is actually a problem anymore. Splinter Twin, it folds to Jund, but it is a very good deck. Otherwise, it's still a top-tier deck. People will pick it up more when they know that if people are playing Jeskai Ascendancy, that they just crush it. Like, even when people now are running Twisted Image and Blue-Red Twin, you don't even need Tarmogoyfs in Twin anymore, thanks to Dig Through Time, to actually just be crazy. Because when you can go like, okay, you have your guy, like it's turn 3, I pass the turn, in your upkeep, I'll pester your lands.
Let me interrupt real quick. Round 4 feature match is about to start.
Okay.
I've got the coverage open as I'm sure everyone else does, but I think that we had a few people asking like, what are the actionables? I think what's important to know is like if something really comes out of the blue, being played by a top pro and does well, like you might not get your orders filled this weekend. Like this is the weekend to confirm your suspicions that you already bought into, not try to get ahead of the game by pressing order 10 seconds before the next guy. You can sure try, but don't be surprised if half of your orders don't get filled.
Yep, I'd have a lot more Rabble Masters if orders like my order was packaged. It had tracking info on it, but they didn't take it to the post office yet.
Yeah, which I mean, on one hand, like we condemn that, blah blah blah. On the other hand, that's just the nature of things.
That's reality. That's going to happen, though.
Some sellers make a point of charging enough for their cards that they can afford to take a quote loss. Like,
the bigger the store is, the more likely they are to be like, all right, that's what we charge, whatever. We make so much money doing this, it doesn't matter.
You're never going to get the cheapest prices from Star City, but they never cancel their orders, and it's a highly respected.
I wouldn't say never. Star City's canceled orders on me.
Okay. They've always been pretty public about never doing that, but.
We did have just some quick questions about Jeskai Ascendancy again. We had a few more little questions. The way that deck gets disrupted is that it needs to have mana elves without summoning sickness to start going off, and so Lightning Bolt slows it down. Things like Remand really slow it down because you keep pushing the turns back while you're drawing cards and developing your mana base. I think Glittering Wish is going to stay $20 as long as Jeskai Ascendancy is a deck because, look, for whatever weird reason, there's just this thought like there cannot be any budget deck in Modern is what the collective mind has decided. So, okay, well, Malirapod doesn't run Tarmogoyf, so that means that Court of Calling has to be $30. The price has to go up. Okay, Curse Catcher has to be $8 because there's no way that we can have a cheap deck in Modern because people will buy it. Enough people buy up the cheap deck to lift it in price.
Real quick, Ben Stark is running a Jeskai aggro deck that's using Stoke the Flames and Dig Through Time. So interesting. I love that we're seeing Dig Through Time in what appears to be an aggressive deck. That's not something I think people are looking out for.
Well, it might be more like a fairies type.
Yeah, so Raph Levy, by the way, frequently known for playing control decks. He has End Hostilities in his hand, and I believe is he on Mardu? Yes, he is. He's on Mardu.
He's on Mardu Walkers, yeah.
There was some question about is End Hostilities going to see play. Certainly, 5 mana Wrath of God is still fine to put down.
Plus, there's enough upside that it's a playable Wrath in EDH.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's got some long-term legs to it as well.
It's not that expensive either, $3 or so.
It's very good in EDH because what you do is you end up blowing off their Swiftfoot boots and stuff like that. Like if you get because there's going to be equipment, especially on Voltron generals. So I think it's playable enough in EDH.
I would play this in Commander over Wrath or Day of Judgment and maybe over Supreme Verdict. The extra mana doesn't matter, and knocking off some of the killer equipment that's going to shut down your deck is huge. Yeah. Saw Chandra in Raph Levy's deck, by the way.
Yeah, we can see his hand right there. He's got an Elspeth and a Chandra in his hand.
Yeah.
I mean, Mardu has marketed itself as we're aggro colors, but man, that Cackling Doom, Crackling. The Doom card, gonna be very good at control deck. Especially against those big green, you're gonna get their best creature.
Definitely.
And it's the best edict effect ever printed in that capacity.
Yeah, it's crazy versatile. Not versatile. The charms are versatile. It's just powerful. It's a tiny, tiny cruel ultimatum in my estimation.
So a lot of people just overlooked it, and there were a lot of people who aren't financiers talking about it, but I think the finance community really wasn't on Doom, and there was such a small buy-in window. Because once everybody noticed, the pre-sale price had already gone up past where I thought you were going to be able to buy in. So there was never financial opportunity, but we still missed it.
So this is one of those classical matchups, though, dating back to the beginning of Magic. You have the tempo deck, the cheap creatures, the burn, facing up against the bigger board-controlling deck. I'm enjoying watching this. Raph just landed a Chandra Pyromaster, which is obviously not her first time on board.
Austin just told us that Wizards named he said this is Watsy's name for the deck. This is just
Yeah,
the Sky Tempo deck.
they're trying to make aggro happen.
Yeah, well, tempo aggro, it's a fine line, but like to me, tempo decks are the ones that use Snapcaster Mage into Vapor Snag, where they mess with your opponent's board position. Aggro just smashes into your face.
We see some Steam Augury action. That's what I want to know.
I love that card personally.
So we have in chat right now. We're talking that LSV is apparently on Jeskai Ascendancy.
Okay.
He may be on Jeskai Combo. So LSV. The nice thing about whatever he plays is you always get an article about it. He always gets lots of screen time. He's a likable guy.
Yeah.
You can depend on what LSV plays to be popular and get people looking at, even if he ends up being in the coverage bracket of the last day or two of the Pro Tour.
And he's one of the best players to play the game, so his
card in this standard format too.
Just his estimation of the format is worth a lot. Like, if he doesn't perform well, that can be for any number of reasons, but his reasoning is probably still very, very sound for why he chose what he did. And I think paying attention to what didn't perform well this weekend, but almost did, and trying to follow up in the week after this to read all the articles from the pros and see, like, hey, I had this great tech and I had this great this whole strategy, but this is why it didn't work out, might tell us what the next iteration of the format after this looks like.
Certainly.
I'll be looking at LSV. I'll be looking at all the Channel Fireball, Star City guys, the TCG player guys. The standard cabal of dudes.
So Rabblemaster gets Chain to the Rocks. Chain to the Rocks has shown up in red-white aggro decks as well as control decks here. It is $1 on TCG Player. You can sell it for 40 cents. Chain of the Rocks is a very fine removal card. We're going to see how well it works out here. It certainly can be played in the Jeskai Tempo deck, although that deck really likes its non-basic, non-mountain lands.
It gets a lot worse when we don't have shock lands, though.
In testing that Jeskai Tempo deck was really cool just about nearly every turn you're scrying.
That's huge. That's so powerful. Like, scry is such a good mechanic. It's almost as good as drawing a card, and we all know how much we love drawing a card. Wow, the game is already over.
Yeah, and that's what happens when Elspeth will spam a board.
Yeah, that card just dominates.
Raph just tagged the Rabblemaster with a Chain to the Rocks. The Rabblemaster was not going to be fighting an Elspeth on board anyway by itself and its own guy spawning, but I think this is nearly a foregone conclusion at this point.
That Elspeth is a good card.
Here comes the Twin Lightning Strikes. Nothing better to do than to peel them off.
Yeah. Someone in Twitch chat just said Lightning Strike is now $2, and I'm not sure he's being facetious, but like, this is a card that sees a lot of play, and it's been reprinted twice in the last year, so I'm not really sure I want to be owning copies of these, but like, they're only 15 cents.
I don't want to be involved with that card.
Yeah. No. That's the kind of card where I'm going to remember it exists when I pick through bulk, and that's about it. So we've switched over now our feature matches to Jensen and McLaren, and it looks like... What do we got here? Another Jeskai Tempo deck, and this is some sort of blue-black. Oh, and the game's over. I didn't even see what happened.
So let me talk about dreams that I want to see this weekend. I want to see somebody use that turtle and attack and then have it go away and cast End Hostilities. I think that would be really funny to see. I would also like to see somebody swing with Narset and flip 4 burn spells. So that's a dream too. I think that Narset is on the far bounds of constructed playability as maybe a sideboard one of, but I always I have a few bingo scorecards in mind.
But that spread though.
Yeah, what's a foil Narset at right now? Because it's too little.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of EDH, Narset, it's a card that it was spoiled and people were immediately breaking EDH. Because you can play a a zero creature Proteus staff Narset deck, you can just suit it up with stuff like not Shield of the Oversoul, the blue white one, Steal the Godhead.
Yeah.
Ooh, I
And
like that. Hey, there's a
yeah,
prognostic
Scourge
thing.
of the Noblest too. I think would be pretty good. And you just you know, throw some equipment on and go to town and just get a ton of value. So I really like foil Narset long term because it's of the 5 cons, it's the best general.
Interesting.
Clearly, it's not close.
So looking at the coverage again, what's this guy? Flash. He's playing some sort of blue-black control with Prognostic Sphinx.
Yeah, Huey Jensen's on blue-black control. Blue-black control was identified from some of our sources on the floor as being one of the decks people are trying out. Pearl Lake Ancient off the sideboard. Ashiok carries a lot of water in that deck.
Yeah.
So I think we had a question in the chat. Wonder if Huey's playing Ashiok. I think it's near doubtless they're playing that because that's one of the few certified pants on head crazy finishers in that deck. If it goes by on its own for 2 or 3 turns, it gets quite unstoppable. And against the decks with like Pelucranos in it, it's very good against those too. If you can get to it, you can get to the counters.
He's got 2 Sphinxes out now, so this is going to be a good chance to see what this card can actually do.
I know that there are a lot of insiders sitting on some prognostic Sphinxes.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that was a card that Jeff Hoogland called like when it came out on Brainstorm Brewery, and I think we've all been waiting for the format to be right. And I think I wrote an Insider article saying sometimes it doesn't. You wait, and then the set prints something that's better. I don't think we have anything better in that spot, at least in this set.
Sphinx, by the way, you can buy it for 76 cents. You can sell it for 50 cents. The spread's about 33%, so it's relatively safe to pick up.
I don't think it's going to take a lot to get this card above the $1 or $2 mark. It just blue-black control needs to be a top 8 deck. This needs to be a 2 or 3 of in that deck to get it above the $1 or $2 mark. What do you guys think about that?
This makes me think like when you're attacking and you're with 2 Sphinxes and you're scrying for 6 every turn.
Jeez.
I mean, you're also attacking for 6 damage every turn.
Away back.
Hey, look at this! Look at this board state real quick. You've got a Sarkhan that can't swing in because of Prognostic Sphinx being a 3/5. That's big. That's big.
Yeah,
he's resolving the Sarkhan anyway too. That's pretty wild. What is the card in his hand?
Looking at the price of Sarkhan, you can't really compare it to Nissa, but on the same token, I think Nissa has shown us what the ceiling is, probably, because I don't think Sarkhan can go above Nissa. But at the same time, like Nissa's high for almost no reason, other than like all the reasons that stuff in M15 is costing more than stuff that's in cons, which is going to be opened way more. So I don't know. It's a weird analog, and it's hard to know what conclusion to draw from the fact that Nissa's still ridiculous. But I don't know. I think Sarkhan's going to have to see a lot of play to have you be glad you bought in now. But if you want him to play with, absolutely, I wouldn't wait any longer.
So Floke is attacking with 2 Prognostic Sphinxes. He scries, puts 1 back. He's holding a Pearl Lake Ancient, but he has not yet cast it. I really want him to cast it. I want him to do well and make Pearl Lake Ancient go up in price. But isn't that fascinating that if you're attacking with 2 Sphinxes scrying for 6 every turn, you probably don't need that 7/6/7 guy.
Yeah, I think that he doesn't want to necessarily commit it to the board when he doesn't need it, and the value of it being unknown information might be higher than the value of having it on the board.
That was probably something that was in his sideboard. His opponent, is this game 3 or 2 or?
This is game 2.
Yeah, so his opponent might not have even seen it.
Here's the thing about Pearl Lake Ancient is I
gotta bring it up. Ben Stark has the double Mantis Rider opening, so we're gonna see what Mantis Rider does here against him.
Yeah.
This is a very, very hard opening to beat.
Yeah, and like the question really is the double Mantis Rider, even the single Mantis Rider, like what are the cards that make that opening bad? And Raph Levy has probably got Anger of the Gods in his
He
Yeah,
does
right.
have anger in his hand right now. He has a Crackling Doom and an End Hostilities. So whether he reads Ben on having 2 riders in hand, I think obviously what he does is he holds Crackling Doom until the attack step.
Yeah, I think that Ben has to cast another 3-drop here, and now like Rattle Master doesn't matter. He's going to take 3 from the Rider. He's going to block the Rabble Master. He can block the Rabble Master all day. He can sit on that Anger of the Gods and just pick off creatures until he overcommits. Like, I think that Nixley's Ram is looking pretty huge here. That's an interesting card to own too. I think it's what's it even worth now?
That brings me to another point.
Yeah.
A Johnny's Pride Mate, reprinted in M15.
Interesting.
Still
Nixley's Ram is
a
a $2 card. Wow.
Because people like it. You know, a Johnny's Pride Mate has been seeing play in Abzan decks for the reason that you can play things like Nyx Fleece Ram. You get triggers off Siege Rhino. There's a Wingmate Rock triggers it when you attack. There are a whole lot of things that can make a Johnny's Pride Mate get out of control really quickly, including, for example, the lands that come into play come into play tapped lands that gain you a life can pump it.
The refuges.
Yeah. So the thing I don't like about Johnny's Pride Mate, but good looking out. That's an interesting card that no one remembers exists. Is that it doesn't gain you life it doesn't get big proportional to the life you gain. You gain 10 life, it's only going to get +1/+1. So that really limits how much I like it. And I feel like if you're casting a Grizzly Bears with upside on turn 2, and your opponent's casting Sylvan Caryatid, like you now have to do work to get ahead of them again. So it's one of those cards where like the right deck can make it insane, but like I don't want to play lands that come into play tapped and gave me a life just so I can get a Watch Wolf. So I think the right deck could make it scary, but I'm not huge on it.
But that's one of those cards that it doesn't matter how many times you reprint it, it's always going to be worth money.
Yeah.
If you look, it was in was Knights versus Dragons.
Everything. A Johnny versus
it's been
probably.
Yeah. It wasn't a Johnny versus Nico Bolas. It might not have been in Knights versus Dragons.
So I'm just checking back in on this game, and it looks like Ben Stark's still got a handful of gas, and Raph still has a handful of answers. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Like just how Mantis Rider is just so aggressive. Like I just can't get over like how swingy that card can be. Like the game revolves around it until like turn 5 or 6. I'm pretty sure. Like you gotta leave mana up to deal with it. You gotta find ways to block it. Like.
Well, now that Ben Stark has the token out, he has the token to protect him from Crackling Doom.
Yeah, that's huge. That's another reason Raffle Master.
What token does he have?
Raffle Master token.
Goblin token.
Yeah, like that's something I didn't even think about, but if Crackling Doom comes to become like a mini cruel ultimatum, then Goblin Rabble Master just gets even better. It's kind of funny how Rabble Master just fills all these strange little holes in the metagame. I wonder if they realized that when they made it.
People are running him to trigger Convoke, and I think by the time you can Convoke Goblins with Rabble Master, you should have won already.
I don't know that the Rabble Master token is going to protect him from Crackling Doom because it doesn't have a higher power.
Oh, that's true.
Crackling Doom is an edict for the highest power, not just an edict.
Yeah,
okay. I'm sorry.
It's edict with upside. Yeah.
It's the best edict possible. Like.
And now, see, Raph has got what that control deck wants. He's got 2 Nyx Fleece Ram out. It's going to make every last bit of burn that Ben Stark draws a little bit worse.
Yeah. I mean, the Nyx Fleece Ram is probably the double Nyx Fleece is going to win him this game.
Yeah, and Ben has a clip to his face. He has a frustrated look on his face as he ships the turn back.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what he's going to do to win through. He's already burned through 2 of his Mantis Riders. Like, what else is at the top end of this deck's curve? His burn isn't going to get him there.
Here's a dig through time. Okay. Now let's see if he plays a Narset. Hope springs eternal.
Narset. Wow. One thing we haven't even talked about in the last hour or 2 is lands. Like, we literally haven't mentioned Mana Confluence once. And I think Mana Confluence is one of those cards that is only going to get more valuable as time goes on, as people realize that taking a damage an extra damage or two to cast Siege Rhino in decks that don't run Siege Rhino's colors is a pretty good deal. And there's a lot of cards that I think are like that, where the extra damage you take from Pain Lands pales in comparison to the power of cards you can run by playing 4 or 5 colors.
Well, I think if that 5-color deck that is probably inevitable comes along, I think people are going to remember that they want it.
Yeah, that card is the reflecting pool that makes 5-color control viable. Like, we don't have Broodmate Dragon, we have Wingweight Rock. We don't have Cruel Ultimatum, but we've got mini Cruel Ultimatums in Crackling Doom. We've got great board wipes in multiple colors. I mean, I think it's definitely there. And, if you can build a deck around Delve, you've got Dig Through Time, and you've got
Treasure Cruise.
Treasure Cruise, the new Tombstalker that kills things with the ability...
Necropolis Feed.
Necropolis Friend.
I remember the occasional card name.
Yeah, look at you go, buddy. So it's what I'm really curious about is Delve going to come out of this tournament as a broken card or a broken mechanic, or is Delve just going to prove to be fair and aggressively costed?
I think maybe they neutered everything to the point where 8-mana Treasure Cruise is probably okay.
Yeah.
6-mana Treasure Cruise, probably way too good.
So this is a time to point out, by the way, LSV apparently won his match on Jeskai Ascendancy, and he is running Altar of the Brood. Altar of the Brood is the permanent. It's a one-drop artifact. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield, each opponent puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. This goes along with the Jeskai Ascendancy deck.
Explain this combo to me, because I think I see where it's going, but I'm not putting together 2 and 2 here.
Okay, so you play a Retraction Helix. Says until end of turn, target creature gains tap, return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. You play something like the Cornucopia or you play an Ornithopter, and you play a 0-cost guy so that every time you play it, you get to untap whatever you put Retraction Helix on. And then you get to use it over and over and over again. You cycle through your whole deck if you want to until you, for example, find your Altar of the Brood, and then you can combo and mill them out.
Got it. Retraction Helix is an interesting card.
It's also a common, so
Yeah.
a 14-cent common.
It's a 14-cent common, which doesn't, it's not going to be a kind of card that I would spec on as a common in general. But something this is apropos to modern, Cerulean Wisps.
Yeah, that card's up to about $1.25. That's one of those things you file away in your head when you're looking through bulk.
It's a poor man's Manamorphose.
Yeah, it is, but it's the kind of card that the Jeskai Ascendancy deck needs to work. And I kind of chuckled when I looked at that and I saw that it was crucial, because I always thought that those Wisps were very, very powerful, but I never knew why. But so here it is. Here's
anything that looks like an egg. You gotta just mentally file away.
Yeah. Like, the untapping of the creature combined with the drawing of the card, I knew it was going to do something someday, but I couldn't have possibly told you what. So good on somebody for figuring out that something was Jeskai Ascendancy.
Yeah, so flipping back to the game, Ben Stark has 2 Rabble Masters out. He's showing Raph Levy what it is like to be facing down a token army.
Yeah.
Raph Levy has a blank hand. I think he has Bloodstained Mire in hand.
He's got some negates. Oh, that's Stark's hand, sorry.
Yeah, Stark has 2 negates and a Sarkhan that he doesn't even need.
The 2 negates are going to be pretty solid here. Like,
they stop the end hostilities, which is about the only thing that's going to unwind Ben's position.
Yeah. This Rabble Master is taking over the game.
There's 2. There's 2.
I don't see the other one.
Look closer. There's 1 tapped and there's 1 untapped.
Maybe my...
Now you double have to attack with all your goblins.
Maybe my stream is lagging, but I'm not seeing it. Anyway, well, so what happened there to get that from a game where we thought nothing was going to change to...
I think the glib answer is that Rabble Masters happened.
Okay. That is a valid thing to say about a $20 card. So yeah, I just got another confirmation that Altar of the Brood is a kill condition in the Jeskai Ascendancy deck. No dealers are buying them, but they're retailing for over 50 cents. So I don't think I would engage in that card. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to risk 60 cents to make 40 here.
I want to see LSV win more than one match.
Here's the thing that you have to remember about LSV's about that deck and speculating on it. For example, typically they'll run an Astral Cornucopia also as their 0-drop because it's sort of relevant.
Interesting.
They can run, if you have a Jeskai Ascendancy out, you can run one copy of Astral Cornucopia and you can run one copy of Altar of the Brood, and you can find those. And if you only need one copy of that to kill somebody with, then there's no sense in speculating on those to buy, thinking that people will need 4 of them. They will probably
need one.
His deck, he probably only has one Altar of the Brood, or a very small number. He probably has 0 to 1 Astral Cornucopia, 0 to 1 Ornithopter. With the idea that once you have started comboing, you're going to be able to go off, and you're going to be able to loot and find everything you need. And then even if they remove your one Altar of the Brood, you probably have some arbitrarily large number of or strength or toughness guy because you have Jeskai Ascendancy pumping as well.
Yeah, it's redundancy, and there's no chance that you're going to need more than 2 ever, I don't think. It's the kind of card where I could see it being useful in other contexts and having some casual appeal and all of that, but like I don't want to go in on this card. I don't want to buy this with cash. I would have liked to have gotten those at like 4 for $1 trade value, but that's not going to happen.
I think that's an error that people can get into sometimes, where they see a finisher or a combo card like that, and they don't process that if you only need one copy of it in your combination deck, then it likely is not going to go very high in value.
So what just happened in this match is interesting. He casts Sarkhan against 5 untapped blue mana and black mana. Guy just shrugs. Puts Sarkhan up to 5. Guy just shrugs. Takes 5 to the face. Like, that's what Sarkhan is doing. He just didn't have an answer. Like, he couldn't destroy it. He couldn't counter it. Like, there's just nothing that he could do. I'm sure there are answers, but like the fact that Sarkhan just comes down with a 5 loyalty planeswalker and there's nothing that blue deck can do about it.
And then as we're peeking in on this match again, it's blue-black control facing down a Sarkhan again. So Sarkhan is everywhere.
Yeah. I don't think that I want to buy him, even if there is upside. I don't want to try to make money now. No. I don't think I want to sell him right now either. I think if you're in, you stay in. If you're out, you stay out. And you know, if you stay out and he doubles in price from here, you shrug your shoulders and go, okay, that's fine. You know, that's a judgment call you have to make too. If you're a player and not just a trader, you have a lot more leeway because you want you're paying for the utility value of owning the card and using it. So, like, if you're a player, you can afford to pay more.
Yeah. Okay. So Butcher of the Horde is on the table, and Butcher of the Horde eats a Hero's Downfall, which is wont to happen.
Yeah. So that's one that Hero's Downfall costs 3, Butcher of the Horde costs 4. So that's a loss.
Thank you, John Madden. I think that if anybody was unclear about those prices.
Well, now you see when the removal spell hits the creature.
That's the best John Madden I've ever heard.
When the removal spell hits the creature, then that's going to be card advantage, and the creature is going to go to the graveyard.
You're still doing it, huh?
Yep. That's how John Madden does it. He just keeps going.
And I think in the time that Raphael Levy and Ben Stark are shuffling up, Sarkhan has a chance to kill Flook before they're even done shuffling and ready with mulligans. So here's Elspeth.
Wild. Some people are having trouble with their stream right now. If you want to sort of narrate what's going on, a few people dipped out, I think.
Park is on a Mardu deck. Flook is on a blue-black control deck. Flook has a blank board, which is not unusual for that deck, and a grip full of cards. We don't know what the cards are, but Park has a Sarkhan with 7 counters and an Elspeth that just Flook is thinking about countering.
So it looks like Levy took game 2 against Ben Stark.
No, Stark took game 2 against Levy. Levy took game 1.
Sorry. There goes that Nyx Fleece for him again. Well, I'd like to see more about this matchup because I'm starting to think that like how decks respond to a turn 3 Mantis Rider or a turn 3 Rabble Master is going to be pretty indicative of what control decks are and are not successful.
Okay, so I want to bring up something real quick. MFC Cracker pointed out that foil dig through time is cheaper than regular on GoatBots for Magic Online. When you are seeing cards move quickly on Magic Online, people often forget to look at the foils. I remember Adam Yurchik told me about how he had gotten foil fetch lands when all of the Zendikar ones were going up crazy in price because people just didn't even think to look at the price of foils. So sometimes you can snag foils basically at old prices from bots because people don't even think to look.
That's a really good point. I think I'm guilty of that too. I don't tend to think about foils when I'm thinking about specs because in my mind I've got this mental block about they're hard to move, they're not liquid.
Well, Magic Online, the foils are irrelevant anyway unless you want to have an all-shiny deck, I suppose.
I think they just lose a lot of their luster when they're not physical.
So interesting, Raph has a Nyx Fleece Ram in play. He has one in hand, and he has an Elspeth sitting at 6. So.
Yeah, I like that he's playing Evolving Wilds.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. That to me says that he's not willing to make the concession to just run fetch lands and hope he gets the right combination. And I think that's what happens when you play without the shock lands. Is you don't have that good synergy that lets you just play fast and lose with your mana base. What is the card in Ben Stark's board? I can't see it well enough.
It is a Nyx Fleece Ram. Or no, Ben Stark has a Seeker of the Way out in play.
Okay.
Which is a 2/2 with prowess, and when it gains prowess, it also gains lifelink. So it often attacks as a 3/3 lifelinker. Which against 2 Nyx Fleece Rams, I don't know if it's going to actually be getting through here. Ben can certainly, if Raph blocks with 1, he can Magma Jet the blocker, and then it will take 5. But he doesn't have the red mana to do that this turn.
Yeah, and the Ram is an 0/4, so you're not going to be able. Most of the things that he can cast with the mana he has available next turn, he's not going to be able to kill 1 Ram and trigger 2 prowess triggers to break through.
Point of order, the Ram is actually an 0/5.
Jesus, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it lacks Defender, which means weekly I think about putting it into a Doran deck in Modern.
I think that's actually a really powerful idea. Turn 2 Ram, turn 3 swing for 5. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
it was relevant when you had the Archangel putting counters on everything.
Truly, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. The fact that it's an 0/5 without Defender is surprisingly interesting. So now we're seeing the turn 2 card Seeker get neutralized. Rabble Master dies. Doesn't even bother swinging with the Seeker. So I wonder if the 2 Nyx Fleece Rams is enough to shut down the aggressive start from Ben here. But we know he's got a Mantis Rider in his hand, and it seems like the Rabble Master was just trying to draw removal. But there's a lot of removal in Levy's deck. I mean, he's got Lightning Strike, Other End to keep him alive till Elspeth comes out and starts dominating the game.
So Ben is running into the classical problem where a fast tempo deck, if it runs into something stalwart like a Nyx Fleece Ram, it has a hard time dealing with the mid game Rafts looking at an Elspeth that's going to come out. I think Ben is holding in the gate in hand, so you can put up a fight. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if he casts the negate on his opponent's turn, he doesn't get the benefit of the prowess triggers. Whereas if he casts the negate on his own turn in response to something Raph tries to do, he does. So then Raph isn't going to cast anything on his turn to get the negate out of his hand. So an interesting cat and mouse game there. What's blowing my mind is that Levy's just got so much more life than the aggro deck, and he hasn't even done anything all game. He just gets to sit behind
The week can get pretty interesting because I mean you get a very quick life swing whenever you draw a card. I mean if you've played a bit of Cons Limited when you have 2 prowess guys out and you cast the spell and you get 2 prowess triggers, it feels really really good.
So now he's tapped out. He can Magma Jet. He can cast. If he has a land drop, he can go Magma Jet Brimaz in 1 turn and trigger double browse.
He has to hold up negate. He knows that he's going to be losing to an Elspeth, so he has to be holding up negate.
It's true. Well, he just countered an Elspeth, didn't he?
I believe he's still holding in negate.
He is. He had 2 negates, but Elspeth was.
You got to worry about things like people can certainly play more than one Elspeth. And there's Elspeth. There's the negate.
Yeah. What's interesting is the sort of non-mode between Seeker of the Way and Stoke the Flames.
I don't think that's a non-bow at all, actually.
In the early game,
I would gladly pay 4 mana to burn somebody for 4, hit them for 6 damage, and gain 6 life. I mean, I know what you mean that you can't.
When the mana is this tight and you're trying to not get blown out by a Wrath and get through 2 Nyx Fleece Rams, like, you'd almost rather just have another Magna Jet here. But no, Stoke the Flames is an insane card, and I was all about it when it came out, and I was like, "There's no way this isn't going to be a staple uncommon." I mean, this is Flame Blast. This is, it's almost Flame Blast. Fire Blast. Kind of a crummy comparison, but it's free 4 damage if you can pull it off right. And with Mantis Rider having Vigilance, and with Rabble Master, it just gets so much more powerful. So I'm going back to our chat here, and we're seeing people talking about Dig Through Time. Sigmund says if Dig Through Times hit $10, he'll be tempted to sell this weekend, and I think that if they hit $10, you ship them out.
Yeah,
that's a fine price. Like.
So I'm loving this game. I think that this is a classical example of that tempo versus control deck.
Yeah. Interesting. So this has been a pretty big turn, but
yeah, the issue with Ben is that Ben has a handful of bullets there, but he's really constrained on mana. He played on a Mantis Rider. He's getting some attacks, and he's leaving his mana open here. He's threatening that, like, if you block my Nyx Fleece Ram, I will Magma Jet it, or I will Stoke the Flames it. And I think here we're going to see a Jeskai Charm on it to put it back on top of the library.
Tapped his Mantis Rider to attack there. There we go. Like, is he running some sort of Stoke the Flames bluff, like trying to tell him, oh, I can't convoke this?
No.
Or is it just probably just a careless error?
So I think Ben really wants to see 1 or 2 more lands here.
So apparently Sean McLaren's Jeskai deck is playing Keranos, which is interesting. We've talked about that card in the context of other formats, but not so much in Standard, have we? He's kind of expensive though, and I don't know that he's ever going to see more than 2 of his 3 ofs in the deck.
So Ben does get his 5th land here. Even at this Pro Tour level, he's shuffling cards in hand. This is hard for people to work through with so many moving parts in an attack step.
This game is really, I think, indicative of what kind of interactions we're going to see in the format. Not all of them, but a good slice. The Magma Jets and the Seeker of the Ways and the Nyx Fleece Rams and the removal, keeping up negate for Planeswalkers, those kinds of cat and mouse games. And I think understanding those and how they interact is the key to making smart specs. Figuring out how the spec that you're looking at fits into these cat and mouse games between archetypes.
So there's Ben's Magma Jet making his Seeker a 3/3. He's picking up the pen. He wants to deal damage here.
Ben looks like he's about to break a sweat. He looks like he has to work for this one.
What's in that hand? Okay. Let's get up the other end here. Try and save the Nyx Fleece Ram. And it's good. Showcasing what a simple Magma Jet will do with a Seeker of the Way.
Wow, the life totals just reversed themselves. Interestingly. That
So
I think that turn really shows what
I had mentioned Secret of the Way in the Uncommons tip sheet I sent out yesterday, and that's one of those cards with a very low spread. It is a real staple in the Jeskai Tempo deck. It feels just like Kitchen Finks when I play it. You gain an absurd amount of life. It's always a 3/3 when it swings in. It's real tricky. You never want to block that guy if you've got a Courser and they can do something like a Magma Jet or get through
Yeah.
2 spells to pump it.
Wow, Ben Stark's 28 life just like that. I think that's what a tempo deck does. Is you got these consistent pressure that doesn't let up but may not get through, and then it can have a few big turns where the synergy of the deck just compounds to reverse the game rolls really quickly.
Absolutely.
Like, Raphael Levy's deck was in control for half of this game, and now Raph is down to a handful of nothing, some blockers that aren't doing enough, and his head is switching
he's got a single
his hand,
hand.
looking at the one land in his hand, going, "What the hell am I supposed to do with
Now,
this?"
Secret of the Way is 36 cents mid and sells it to Adventures On for 20 cents, so that is a very low
That's a good
low risk. And if Secret hits $1, which it easily could, it's an uncommon. It's going to continue to be playable even after Cons is open. I still see a lot of potential in Secret of the Way right now.
Oh, definitely. This card seems like it could be a staple in multiple formats, for sure.
We have liked it a bit in Modern. I don't think that there's a Jeskai Ascendancy deck in Modern or Jeskai deck in Modern to begin with right now, but it is a really fascinating card to be playing. Burn is a real problem right now in Modern, and a card like that poses a lot of problems for Burn.
So interestingly, the aggro deck just resolved an Ancestral Memories here via Delve. So if you start looking back on this game now in hindsight and realizing every time Raph killed one of Ben's creatures, 1 mana got permanently added to Ben's mana pool that he could only spend on instant speed card draw, which is a restriction I will gladly sign up for.
Your Raph fires off a Mardu Charm and sees a disappointing hand with a whole bunch of heat left in it.
The Mardu Charm hurled around the world, or not. Wow, the life totals are now 31 to 17. I think that tells us what we need to know about the Seeker of the Way, and also the fact that he can trigger Seeker of the Way with a instant speed 2-mana card draw spell in Dig Through Time. I really think Dig Through Time is. I'm looking at it now, and people in the chat have been talking about it a lot. But it's the more and more I think about this card, like it's not fair. It's a 2-mana instant that does what it does. Like, you're not going to need to cast it early in the game, and by the time you cast it in a late game in an aggro deck, you've got enough stuff in your yard to.
What's interesting also is that that Ben is casting it for as much mana as he can to preserve that graveyard, so that he can cast another one. You're not dumping the whole graveyard and hoping that you have end of turn spells that you can cast.
That's a great point. And I think that's one of those subtleties that a newer player or just a worse player would not fully grok at first, which is that Delve is just the way to kind of cheat it out by a couple turns. You're not trying to go for like the big flashy Delve to make a point. You're using as little Delve as possible because you know you're about to find more of them. This game does not look winnable for Levy. Sigmund just posted in our chat that we're not seeing or hearing anything about green or any mention of gods other than an offhand mention of Keranos.
There is the deck that runs Pharika and Eidolon of Blossoms to create a death-touching draw engine, and that's
Like that.
worth keeping in mind. But the gods just have aside from Keranos, been not very interesting.
Yeah, I think that with what we were talking about regarding Death Touch, Pharika she's a 3-drop, right?
Yes.
That's worth paying attention to unto itself. And Ben Stark took down the match, by the way, with Jeskai Tempo. Pharika is interesting to me right now. 25% spread, sub $5 mythic, and the 5/5 indestructible for 3. You know, you're not necessarily going to trigger it easily, but when you're playing it alongside Eidolon of Blossoms and Nyx Weaver, I mean, Nyx Weaver Farrakha is actually a nice looking engine unto itself, and then when you start combining Eidolon of Blossoms, you get some cool recursion tricks. What third color would you pair with this Golgari stuff to make it more interesting? Would you try to run Empty the Pits in this kind of deck, or is that a non-bow with Farrakha and Nyx Weaver?
I would still run empty.
Yeah. What other matches do we have going on that we can learn from? And I think we've got a nice slice of the format here. We're here. He talks about Butcher of the Horde here in the Young versus Floch match. Is it Floch? Floch? Floch?
I'm
Floch?
saying Floch because I'm presuming it's German.
Floch? Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
Floch, there it is. They're calling Park Jun Young's deck Mardu Midrange. What is that? I don't know if that's their name or what. Is it a defined archetype? All right. So I think we're going to take a break from the podcast now. We've got some write-ups that we need to do. Jason's nipped out for a bit. Doug, you're going to go write some stuff for our insiders. So I think this is a good time to take a break. We've covered a lot of ground, and I hope people listening like this format. I really want your feedback on it. It's something we're experimenting with. So in chat or on our forums, or just email me, kellyreid@gmail.com, and let me know what you think, what we could do better, what you'd like to see more of. I'm having a ton of fun doing this. The other guys are too. So we are going to sign off for now. If you're an insider subscriber, keep an eye on your inbox soon. Keep an eye on your inbox all weekend. We're going to keep shunting you the best information we can get. And we'll be in the Insider IRC chat pretty much all weekend, so you can always catch up with us there. Take care. Thanks for tuning in.